a hint how to do that?
Just go on the down. There is a little share screen.
Oh, I can see it now.
So I can see you very clear.
Yes. Yes.
It's okay?
Yeah. Just make it a full screen.
Good.
Yeah. Now you can start.
All right. So I named this presentation Drop of the Sky Blue. And the reason for it is the remedy I'm now using quite often. And it's really a high-rank remedy in my practice currently. It started all about the end of January this year. And it was actually at the time when the pandemic hasn't arrived yet fully in our country, in Nigeria. And it was interesting to observe since the beginning that that there were quite a lot of people needing this remedy, and they really teach me how to use the remedy and what to expect from the healing action. So I will just quickly show you. I'm not only the homeopath, but I also work as the urgent medicine doctor for the EMS in our country, and I also work as intensive care doctor in London. This is just part-time job. So I had the access comparing to other colleagues who complains, homeopaths who complains that probably there is no enough patient positive for coronavirus. So I have access to this patient. So I have a quite nice pool of people who reacted very well to the remedy. So let's start with this. So, there are a lot of people who probably get the infection, but they didn't develop any signs of infection. It was probably asymptomatic or very mild. There is a mild people, it's look like normal, pretty similar as a cold or as a mild viruses of respiratory tract, or moderate, or for sure there are a couple of people, little percentage, who suffer from pneumonia, who need hospital care, who need the ventilator, and of course, some cases end up with the death. I'm going to move forward, and that's what I found out. It's probably not completely new, as I show you later, because already our colleagues from the 19th century already published in some old historical records of homeopathy that there is some connection between the epidemics of flu, not only coronavirus, and that's probably the reason why we suffer quite a lot as a humanity, as a mankind, not as a sporadic disease somewhere. And I did some research, and I was quite inspired by the work of French philosopher Michel Foucault, who wrote extensively about the transfiguration in society, transfiguration of the power, transfiguration of the medical system after onset of the epidemics or pandemics. And I found out very interesting links about the air pollution, ecology, and the spreading of the virus. And then what I try to convey, that's the hypothesis, it's for sure not confirmed, that probably the reason for the, not the reason, but the contributing factor for the Spanish flu during the World War I was the pollution of the air by the warfare gases. And that was mainly the chlorine, which affect the respiratory tract. And then that people were wearing the gas mask and so on. And there was strong affection of respiratory tract with all the possible symptoms and also death. What I think, what polluted mostly last year our atmosphere was actually the wildfires in Australia. You have been able to watch it on the NASA when they make pictures of the atmosphere, and there were clouds and clouds of many gases and all of these coming from the woods. So my impression is It's simply connected. And then you can see that I made a formula, you know, it's not a proper formula, but there is simply connection between the chlorine probably and the Spanish flu. And there is a connection between ozone, which was affected, and then between the current pandemic. Here is the record already. As you see, our colleagues from the past, they wrote already that there is a probably connection between the influenza generally, or let's say viral respiratory tract infection, and the amount of ozone in the atmosphere. Nice record. Is dated 1869 actually. They know already. I come with a hypothesis actually quite at the beginning from the pandemic. What is the possible connection and how to treat the people affected? And what I found out, that what I call impact, it was something which really hit the society, which really hit the humankind generally. So it was not only the somatic expression of the disease, like those who contracted the infection and suffer from respiratory tract infection, or with all this severity or mildness or moderateness, but there were a lot of people, since the lockdown or curfew was introduced to many countries and and so on. So they start to feeling the same what I have heard from the coronavirus positive patients. They say, I cannot breathe, I'm suffocating, I feel isolated, I can't do this and I can't do that, I don't like this face mask on my mouth, I'm suffocating, I have the pressure here. And there was a third group of the people who says, okay, I can tolerate this quite well, okay, I don't need to go to the work, maybe I can stay in the flat, it's fine for now, for a moment, but I have such a fear and I have anxiety because I fear death, because what would happen if I catch the infection and I will die because of suffocation. So since the beginning, I started to call this pandemic with this term, and it actually this term comes from one of my patients. I didn't develop this term by myself. It comes from a patient who was talking the whole time about the horrible global impact of everything. You know, this pandemic is global because here and there, and then you can see on this part of the world and on that part of the world and how they react and how I react and this and that. So actually the global impact, I borrow this term from this patient and I make the whole theory about that. And as you see, since the beginning of the pandemic, I was really quite sure that this is just the iceberg. The coronavirus itself is just the iceberg of it. It's nothing comparing to all these changes, all these phenomena which are going on the level of social, cultural, political level, and then of course the ecological level. So I'm now talking about the ozone because I'm pretty sure in some way, and for sure it's on the other hand, it's just the theory or the hypothesis, that the disturbed ecosystem of ozone is one of the contributing reason why we have pandemic today. And you can see and you can read all of these. I'm not going through all of that. So I just make some words visible, more visible. And ozone is actually the oxygen. So we cannot breathe it, but it's very important for the life and living space on the Earth, of course, because there's a ozone layer between the space and which protects us against the solar winds and solar light. And then most of the ultraviolet light is actually filtered through the ozone layer. It's very interesting, as I mentioned before, that there's a chlorine, and then my hypothesis is probably the first World War Pandora's box is connected with the chlorine and respiratory tract infection. And at the time, it's very interesting to notice that the chlorine, the smell of the chlorine, is in a small quantities. You can have in your nose this smell because of ozone, of course. So I'm not going through the chemical stuff, but what is interesting is this one. And I can see exactly this, what is described here on the physical level, as a physics or chemistry. I can see in my patients, they are talking about kind of nuclear power inside that, about the rage they have. They are usually compress this anger and rage, and then they burst out like a nuclear power. And of course, at the beginning, when I didn't know about this ozone feature, I, for example, prescribed some radioactive substances like plutonium nitricum or uranium oxidatum, and others, of course, like neptunium, for example, muriaticum. But nowadays, when I hear this language, I know already that it belongs to ozonum as well, but we don't know it, because in our Materia Medica, many authors, and I'm really grateful to Anne Schade and also Anne Verwarke, who wrote the book about the ozonum. They usually mention the chemical properties of the ozonum, but there's less information about the physical properties. And I think what I'm now talking about this, it's more not the chemistry itself, but it's more the physics of the ozonum. Because as you know, there's an ultraviolet light component, which is always present in the ozonum patients in some way, sensitivity to sun or sensitivity to any radiation, X-rays. They can develop some consequences after the X-ray exposure or CT or even MRI exposure. And believe me, there are many patients who actually suffer from 5G vibration. And I was told that it affects the oxygen molecule. And I was not a believer before. But my ozonum patient taught me how dangerous is 5G. But beforehand, I didn't know that. I said, okay, we have 3G, we have 4G, we have whatever, LTA. We have many of these networks. So I'm not bothered particularly about 5G. But these people are very sensitive to the environment, to the living space they live, and they are very sensitive to any pollution of the living space. And one of the pollution is also radiation. It's not only the chemical. So let's move forward. And this is very, very interesting point. I think it's an original idea. And I asked it's not completely doing what I like, but never mind. As you see, I asked my graphic designer to do this ozonum, which is the cyclic ozonum. It is hypothesized, it is predicted that it exists, and it creates the triangle. And of course, what is interesting that you can find out that there are some tolerance, and they simply think about it. I will come back to this. I call it 3 butterflies in one eye, because there are 3 molecules nicely packed in this. So this is the theory of ozonum from the physical point of view and chemical point of view. And then what I'm doing now, I call it a 3-way prescription. So there's a Thunderbolt prescription, and I start to do it, let's say 1 month ago or a little bit more, because I saw already quite a lot of ozonum cases that I need just, let's say 5 minutes to hear the language of ozonum patients, and I also hear the cough they have. It's very specific cough. I will show you. It's like a and again. There is a spell of cough. It's usually dry. There is a sputum stuck inside, which they are not able to get rid of it, and then they gas at least once. So this is very, very typical for the ozonum. So when I hear this cough and I see the reaction, I'm nearly sure I can prescribe during this particular pandemic the ozonum, and with the good results. I have the shorter consultation for 30 minutes. For some people, it's a more digestible because of the financial situation and so on. And I need less time, and I can take more people. So I continue with this, and then I made a little bit. I'm sorry for this. My graphic is not the best. And then from the third, as I show you, I have the third group of patients. One is patients who actually have the flu-like syndrome or have some viral infection. Of course, not all patients were tested. And for some, I don't know even if it was coronavirus plus or not. but definitely they suffer very similar respiratory tract symptoms and have a very similar feelings about it. Like I can't take breath in, I can't breathe properly. And after a while, I defined 5 groups of people who are really good, which are really good indicators for prescription. So one is this somatic group. Okay, I have some viral infection, I can't breathe properly, I can't take breath in, I need to feel free, I am coughing, I have this or that. And these people definitely profited from the ozonum prescription. But of course, there were people who take care of those who were infected. For example, doctors, healthcare practitioners generally, pharmacists, and so on. And this is the second group I named. It's the intolerance of gas or all these gears and biohazard clothing and everything. And they, of course, I use it at my work as a urgent medicine doctor. And of course, you are completely covered, you are completely isolated from the environment. You have these glasses, you have this these shields around your face, you have the face mask, and you are actually exposed to the ozonum-like situation. Maybe you are not ozonum, but because of the situation, outside situation, you appear to be in the context of it. It is as if you are in the ozonum-like feeling. We can call it delusion, but it's quite a reality for a couple of months already. And there is other people, another group who may benefit from it. And then I also have few patients that they are not taking care for anybody. They don't suffer from the somatic or the somatic level from viral infection, but they are completely crazy because they can't move outside, they can't go for a walk. There's the home isolation, they can't meet their friends, and they suffer from the kind of psychological problems because of the home isolation. Another group is people who are maybe a little bit okay with this because everybody is affected in some way, but who have the feeling that okay, it anytime can come into me, it affects me, I have fear of it, there are droplets, there are clouds and fogs of droplets everywhere, fumes, you need to really cover your face and it's really dangerous. And they are quite panicking because of the fear from the infection, despite the fact that they are absolutely fine otherwise. And the 5th group, it's people who listen to the, how to say and how to call it, and not to use the bad words. It's the news from the TVs, from the media, which I call propaganda. It's nothing else, because maybe the severity of the pandemic is not so bad as we are told by the media. So there are 2 possible reactions, but I'm moving forward. Okay, this is what I found out. This is something like a essence for the prescription. So the main rubric from the repertory is respiration deep, decide to breathe. And the reason is I can't take breath in, I can't inhale properly, I can't expand my chest, I'm not able to really do something with that. And can you please tell me, I'm suffocating, I'm gasping, I'm not oxygenated properly. And you will hear all these possible metaphors about the breathing. So the feeling is suffocation or oppression of the chest, could be just because of anxiety or fear, doesn't matter. And you can have the problem in the sinuses or airways or lungs. Of course, chest wall or diaphragm is contracted, or you have some thoracic spine problems. All of these leads at the end to the restriction of breathing, and that is a worse oxygen carbon dioxide exchange. And especially for ozone patients, they really like this process to be smooth. They are severely affected if the inhalation and exhalation is not smooth. So you can also use it on a symbolical or metaphorical level, because also in the patient, I found out that they really like to have their own freedom. They are freedom fighters. They like their space. They like to do what they want, and it's not only the freedom like for the sake of my own opinion or my own needs. They feel free to do what they want, and also to feel that they are protected. They are protected and interconnected with its environment. Of course, when they are decompensated, is the reverse. They feel isolated, not connected, and then their living space is contracted in some way. This is the poem I wrote, and then I collected a lot of metaphors from my ozone patients, and I put it in one poem, which has 8 strophes. And as you see, one theme for on the somatic level and a psychological level as well. One theme for ozone patient is the eye. Is the eye, and then perceive the eye on the sky, or the bad big brother eye who's watching them. Of course, on the other hand, on the other hand, they don't want to be seen. They sometimes really hide themselves. They are secretive. They don't appear. They don't show their proper their inner feelings. So the sight is affected, and on the somatic level, there is some allergies of the eyes or the agglutination of the eyes. There's a conjunctivitis. They have dry eyes. There is the Sjögren syndrome or Zika syndrome of the eyes. There's a lot of problems. There can be glaucoma of the eye. They can have troubles of the eye after laser therapy, and all of these. The really eye is the one main thematic area for the ozone. Again, it's just the poetically written, but actually, when you look on the sky during the day, you see this nice sky blue. This is a symbol for ozone patients. It's a symbol of the spaciousness. This is a symbol of the protection as well. And of course, as I showed you before, the ozonum, depending if it's gaseous, of solid or liquid, it has different color. And the patient, ozonum patient, likes to have the the color of the blue in different shades as well. This is very important. When I wrote down this King of Flying Daggers, what I found out, and it's not yet in the repertory, we are working with Roger van der Zaru to make an addition to repertory. They are sensitive to injections, they are sensitive to sharp pins, to hedgehogs, to urchins, everything which can disturb this, let's say, ozone layer around them, or disturb the body integrity. This is one thing. And you can see also from the light perspective. So in the middle picture, you see that this is the blue lady who is filtering the rays from the space or from the sun, and makes it digestible for the living creature on the earth. Yeah, this is the main point, that really ozonum can affect the lungs, can affect the airways, can affect the sinuses, but also the gastrointestinal tract. There is a lot of stomach problems, a lot of gallbladder problems, and a lot of bowel problems. And it's not all. What is meant by the transparent coats and layers? It's, as I say, there are a lot of suggestions already in the repertory about the transparency, invisibility, hiding, invisible cloaks, and so on. Spotted ghosts, this is similar concept. I mean, if you are a ghost, you are not a physical body. You are this concept, the mythology of patient who needs the ozonum. It's like, my physical body is just the coating. It's not me. It's not me. I'm here, but it's not me. I have the body, but it's not me. I'm like something which is more spiritual. Okay. As you see, there's a very nice tattoo. This is not my patient. I just borrow it from the internet. But you know, they use many times the symbol which suggests something flying or floating in the air. And then one symbol is the birds, eagles, usually raptors, but other birds as well. They use the butterflies as the symbol of the flying, floating, of the freedom, and also they use a lot of meteorological terms to describe their illnesses. On the other hand, there is the polarity, let's say polarity, when they feel that if they don't have energy, they feel heavy like a lead. There's a rubric actually in the repertory. It's like a ladder. And I have one patient who said, okay, my sinuses are hurting me a lot. It's like if somebody inject a dispersed lead into my sinuses, because and this is similar with the airways, they feel it's very heavy. It's heavy inside the sinuses. There is a pressure, there is a balloon compressed, or there is the lead. Okay, they sometimes are really, really proud. They sometimes come to the clinic and they are not much cooperative in some way for some types of ozone patients. They appear to be a little bit arrogant, you know, in some way, like, oh, stupid doctors, they just pollute, you know, people with vaccines. They just, you know, pollute people with chemical stuff. You know, I don't like doctors. They are like intruders with all the procedures, operations, chemical stuff, and everything. So it's quite strange, because if you are a doctor and the patient come and saying something like this, like, oh, stupid doctors, you say, okay, shall I feel offended or not? And of course, there's a lot of symptoms related to the breathing and to the, you know, toxicology of the breath, of the breathing cycle. This hint is about the global warming and also about the rage, compressed rage, congested rage, and congested anger, because usually you hear in their stories there was a lot of harm done from the original family or all around, because there are specific people. I honor them quite a lot. They are really specific people. And sometimes they really have an outburst of the rage. If it's too much, if they feel overwhelmed, if they feel completely under the power of some pressure which is unavoidable, they really can burst into the proper rage, like a volcano. And that's the most important. They are really somebody who lightens up you, who can give you the inspiration, because in their thinking, they think in kind of a global way. They can connect many things, and there are many suggestions in the repertory already from the proving, which was done by my friend Anne Schade. And then the proving says that there are a lot of dreams about the railways and roads and journeys and traveling, and all these dreams you can interpret in the way that also there is a delusion connected everything is. So this is not just the connection from the outside, it's also connection inside the brain, because they are really good thinkers and they can offer you very, very interesting and inspiring ideas about how life can be. And it's really something. And of course, the breathing is connected with the freedom. To breathe in freely means I'm not restricted or oppressed by any domination. And doesn't matter if the domination is democratic or it's feudal or it's some king or somebody dominates you, or parents. I made quite a lot of articles. I'm not showing everything here. For example, this dream, this is what my really good case. And on the picture, you can see the dry land, cracked land, desert, sun is there, you know, hot, burning fire, dry trees, no water, and small elephant with the gas mask. It's pretty, you can find in the rubrics, actually, this dream. Of course, separated in many different rubrics, but it was nice to see that the dream, the landscape they have during the dreams probably happened external reality nowadays, what with all these measures, anti-pandemic measures. Some of my works, and then, you know, this is for my Indian colleagues probably. I'm not doing this connection, you know, please don't misunderstand me. But, you know, to see this blue, nice guy, I know it's Shiva, it's the Lord Shiva. And then he has a trident, as you see. So there's a number 3 in there. And then he's connected with many snakes, because my patient of Ozonum, they also talks a lot about snakes and other animals like elephants, camels, snakes, hedgehogs, urchins, what else? Yeah, something like that. So I simply start to call the Ozonum remedy the blue protector, because they like sky blue. They like azure, they like sky blue. They like the spaciousness. It's very spiritual-like, you know, very spiritual-like, and they are concerned about the living space. There can be ecological activists like Greta Thunberg. They can be people who fight against the 5G and so on, who fights against the pollution of the water, of the environment, and so on. And it's a very good remedy for the breathing generally, not only the viral infection. Is the breath of life, I call it, the primordial breath of life, because there were a couple of patients who was born prematurely in their history, or there was a cesarean section, they were born, or they suffer some suffocation during the birth process and during and postpartum adaptation. So that's why I call it blue protector of living space and primordial breath of life. And this is just another mythology, actually. It's from the other side, because it's a global remedy. It's a really global remedy for me, the ozonum. And then this is from South America. This is the jaguar, it's a blue jaguar. And then for that culture, it's a protector as well. So I use the same. So sometimes the patient appear like this. You will be able just to see their eyes, and everything else will be invisible for you. I mean, even for a therapist or homeopath, because they can really make a good mimicry. They can really hide themselves behind the transparent layer or behind the transparent curtain. So global impact, it's my logo, it's my project I'm doing now about the really deep study of the ozonum remedy. And I would like to invite you to join my websites, because there will be more cases, there will be more articles about the ozonum and about the possible connections between the disturbed ecosystem of ozone and pandemic. So thank you very much for your attention.
Peter?
Oh yeah?
Could you please, on your screen, put your website so people can see?
Okay. Okay, let me do this. Doesn't do much. Now.
So it's global-impact.cz, is that it?
All word. So it's both. It can be, okay, I can rewrite. It can be as well. Like this.
Yeah, one dot.
Yeah.
Impact dot. You've got one too many dots there.
Yeah, sorry. Because I don't see it, because the Zoom is doing, there's something.
Making it a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So global.
-impact.
Yeah, dot, and
World.
It could be world as well. And it should direct you to English.
Great. Thank you. And one person said, we won't do questions until the end and discussion, but roughly how many cases of ozone have you already seen?
So let's say it's around, nowadays it's around 60 already. But
60
some cases are, yeah, there are some ongoing evaluation. So definitely around 30 to 40 cases, I can present the case with the follow-ups and to prove that the remedy was a treatment option for it.
Very good. Thank you.
And it's collected from the end of January until yesterday.
Excellent. No, thank you very much indeed for a marvelous insight into a remedy we've known about in the background, some of us, but not yet focused on. Fantastic. Right, so
Then
you're
once
going
again,
in.
I will show you just the cases, articles, like looks like this. It's still shared. Can you see it?
Yes, that's right.
So you
Yes.
can then read all this on my website.
Yes. Do you have a usual potency for treating this infection?
Yeah, actually, I was quite lazy to think about the potency. So I'm using LM1. I'm dosing it every day, and I'm just playing with the frequency of dosing or the frequency of repetition.
Yeah.
So that's my first potency I'm doing, LM1.
Yeah, excellent. Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we should move on now. And if the host, which actually isn't me, I'm just the link man. If the host could unmute Ton Janssen, that would be wonderful. And Ton, it is now your turn. All other questions will wait until after we've had our last speaker. Thank you very much. So Ton, it is now, you have the stage.
Yes, thank you. So the first thing is that I thought, what kind of disease is it really? It is a hysteric disease. It is a man-made disease. It's a manipulated virus. That's what we see. Or I'm too quick with talking.
John, please switch on your video.
What happened? Start my video.
That's it, we've got you.
Yeah. So I can start.
Please.
And share your screen and start.
Yeah, okay. It's very necessary to understand what kind of disease we are dealing with. Because normally we have an epigenetic remedy or a few remedies for the treatment of a virus or an epidemic. But this time, there is no one remedy. I don't see him. I use several remedies because it is a manipulated virus. So it is a man-made virus. And that's a new thing. And this virus is very strong because the immune systems of mankind nowadays are very suppressed with the beginning of the life with vaccines. So, and antibiotics and lots of medication, polluted air, lots of heavy metals. It is really amazing that we can survive it. And the problem is vaccines change and make our immune system more weak and not able to act on the moment when necessary, because the white blood cells, the T cells, and the dendritic cells have the wrong information of the disease, what is in the environment of. So we see on the moment that we need to deal with a disease, what is really unknown. So we need to help the body to protect it for the virus. So when we have orthomolecular, and I think that's also a thing what is necessary for homeopaths to work, in example, with quercetine and zinc to close the duct of the virus. The virus is in the system. The virus is not a living creature. It starts to live into human body cells or animal cells as well. And it comes in the system through the mucus of the mouth and nose, and it want to penetrate in a cell. So the receptors of the cell are open because our immune system is not able to act on a properly way. So this virus go to this cell, and the duct is open for this cell. And when we take quercetin and zinc in a higher dose, even if you do this 3 days, when the diseases start, then the duct will close. So there is no cell who adapt this virus. So that virus gonna die in 3 days or taking this automolecular things. But and that's necessary to understand, because we see a lot of tests that they are positive for corona, but it is false positive. Because mostly you see people who has the flu vaccine in the autumn or a few months ago, they are false positive. They test false positive, so they are victims. They are people who have this virus, but in a way, it could be someone else, something else, another virus or another disease or an underlayer disease. So it is not the same way as we do always to find a remedy for the epidemic or the pandemic. So I see patients who are coming with, they are very suffocated. They start to become blue and from anxiety. So I see such a people.
Ton,
Yeah.
Ton, have
Yeah.
you got a presentation on your screen?
No.
Because if so, could you show it?
What could I show? I have no presentation. There was no ask for this.
Yes. Are you showing a presentation on your screen?
No.
Okay. All right.
If it is okay, but
Yeah, that's okay.
I have
No,
no presentation.
just if you had a presentation there, we can't see it. But if you're just talking, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So for these patients, I use aconite, or when they very suffocated and become blue in the face or hands, then I use Hydrocyanic Aceticum, and it is very beautiful. You see directly a change and they start to breathe again. And also arsenicum to protect them from the fear of dying. That's mostly the first remedies I start with when there is a case from anxiety. So, but I'm always search for what is there? What is the situation before the patient come in this situation? And until now, in all the cases, only one, they had all the flu vaccine, because they are elderly people, mostly above 55, and a few very old people above 85, and they all react very healthy on the treatment. I can give some remedies, what I use several times, like antimonium sulfuratum auratum. They are lost the connection with them, with our inner self. So they are not, they become in fear, they are disconnected. That disconnected is antimonium. Sulfur is out of harmony or in harmony. And aurum is the you can say the sunshine, the I am, the awakening of the I am. And if you give this remedy with very suffocated, disconnected people, because they are disconnected, because they get a mask, they get oxygen, or they get a line, and they are separated from the social world. And then they can come to their inner self. And often you see that they can stop very quickly with a breathing machine in the hospital. And they come back. They come back into life. And Baptisa is also a beautiful remedy. I use it. It is one of the strongest, together with Sina arsenicosum or Quina arsenicosum, that's work strongly on the psoric miasm. So they have lack of energy, lack of power, lack of oxygen. So they are very deeply in the psoric miasm. And these are beautiful remedies for this. Also, Sina arsenicosum is a remedy what works very strongly when they start to recover, but they are totally exhausted. They have no energy. There is no energy left. They couldn't walk. They are couldn't sit properly. They are very tired and exhausted. And they come back on life. So I have several patients who I give first antimonium sulfuratum auratum, Baptisa, Quina arsenicosum, and they recover totally. Within 3 days, they were from very ill, very suffocated, to healthy breathing again with these 3 remedies. And I had also one patient who the lungs were very infected, a lot of noise, a lot of saliva, and they cough with a rain of mucus, very fine rain, you can say. And aspidosperma, because they are coughing and coughing and coughing, and so they excrete a lot of humid air, so they infect easily the others around them. And aspidosperma stopped this very quickly. And there are also people who couldn't lay down. If they start to lay down, they start to cough. And Drosera did a beautiful thing, because they get irritation and itching in their throat, and Drosera helped them very quickly to bring the exploration, the mucus out, and then it stopped the itching, and it gave result. It gives some relief of coughing. So, and Lycopodium is a beautiful remedy. What I see several times, that people feels that they are very tight. The whole body is like in a tongue. The lungs, they couldn't breathe. They had a lot of saliva. They couldn't bring out this. They are like, has a fear like arsenicum. They were very busy to grab the air, so like in an ozone situation. So, and it works very beautiful. And I see several Stunum patients that are people who feel a very big stone on the chest. And they are so tired, and they has the feeling that they feel out of each other. So one patient tell me, my arms and fingers fall off. That was in my dream. I did nothing. I only want to take a cup in my hand, and my hand dropped out. It was my fingers and the cup fall down because my body was all kind of fragments. It falls out of. And I have several of these patients helped. Also nurses from the hospital who works hard and were very tired, and they get this virus, and they had a feeling that they are fragmented. Even the lungs are fragmented. So, and also the dreams, that they fall out of each other. And that's the Stunum picture. They couldn't walk properly anymore. And I had a patient with MS, multiple sclerosis, and she was already very in a problem because she was in a wheelchair, she couldn't walk properly, and then she get this virus and go to the hospital on the breathing machine. And I give this lady plumbum iodatum, because she was a lady who want always going on, never want to rest, but now she was very suffocated and on the breathing machine, and I give plumbum, and after a week she comes out of the hospital, and she even become better with the MS. She get more strong legs, more strong arms. She could do a few steps, what she didn't already for 3 years. So it was a beautiful result also on the underlayer situation. So I always look also to what has happened before. Why these patients get this disease? Because when someone is healthy, or is not vaccinated with the flu vaccine, then there is not a really risk to get damage or get this disease, or with slight symptoms. So, and these nurses tell it to the other nurses. So I get a lot of nurses from the hospital who I treat very quickly. And mostly with Stunum, because they work more than 10 hours a day, because there is a big need on nurses, and they are exhausted, and then they get this disease because they are more acceptable for this disease because they are very tired. And Stunum is mostly the remedy I use for this nurses, because they have the symptoms, but also antimonium sulfuratum for a few. I had a lady, a nurse, who was already with respiration problems. She has very bad asthma, and she get also this disease. And I give, in the first remedy, I give her Baptisa, who did a great job. And then I give her Cyclic Ozone, and she was totally cured in 3 days. And she wanted to go on work after a few days. I said, no, wait for another few days and then you go to work. First, you need to get some more energy. So in that case, I give Arsenicum iodatum. And then she calmed down and said, okay, I wait for a few days. I enjoy the time to recover. And I've also patients who are suffocated and they smell like ammonia because the sweat and everything, and they have the feeling that they can breathe only with the upper lungs, and when they can breathe with the upper lungs and very suffocated, and they smell on ammonia, I give ammonium carbonicum, and it helps a lot. When they can breathe with the underlungs with a lot of saliva and certainly suffocated, then ammonium muriaticum is a beautiful remedy, what I see several times. But what to do after the hysteria crisis, because I call it hysteria. And it is a kind of hysteria crisis. And then we need to see what has really happened in the system, what has happened in the immune system. And then we can see that when the disease is in a high level, in an acute situation, then we see a cytokine storm. The body wants to work because the other systems are out of duty because of the vaccines or polluted air or whatever. So the cytokines need to do the job, and we get a cytokine storm, and that's very harmful for our cells. So for people who are on a longer term on the hospital without any homeopathic or other treatments, only the general allopathic treatments, they get a lot of antibiotics, even they know that it's not working. They get a lot of sleeping medications, so they become relaxed. They get oxazepam to get relaxed. They get all kinds of soft general anesthetics to be in a restful sleeping situation. And then we have all kinds. These are things that has an effect on a longer term, this kind of medication or treatment. And people suffocate later on with all kinds of harmful issues in the brain, in the with the neuropeptides, but also the immune system harm, and also our bodies create very well and can treat the lungs, because mostly it are the lungs. Sometimes I have seen in sternum cases that also the kidneys are involved in this crisis. So if we look to this, I discovered that we can use the when it is because of vaccines in the past or even before, we can use potentized vaccines together with poly-EG. That's are the antibodies who are formed because of these vaccines. And we can use even the flu vaccine. I believe this would be a great offer to the patients. We have cytokines to help the body to get the right information from the cytokines. You can read all kinds of things in my book, Fighting Fire with Fire, that you can see how this Remedies works on our immune system to cure the immune system, so that the harm will solved, because it is not always clear what I want to say is we need to understand what is really happened into these patients. What is the physical damage? What is, and if we know this damage and where it comes from, so then we can cure it with body-owned substances. We can do it with nosodes from diseases, even from the COVID-19. We can use this nosode afterwards, together with poly-EG, to help the patients to recover what is damaged. So we get mostly lung problems afterwards, and homeopathy is one of the most powerful possibilities for treatment to heal this this problem, this harm, what already is done. So, and what has happened in the world, that's also a thing to be aware of. It looks like a fight between good and bad. It looks like a war. And we have beautiful remedies for this, like magnesium bromatum. Afterwards, we get a lot of patients with a trauma, because for everything what has happened with them and their family, and because we get a complete other world. And this world, we need to act as homeopath with new remedies, a new vision about what has happened. So I'm busy with writing a book about human chemistry. It goes about how this chemistry works. And I write already different kinds of remedies, 72 remedies, new remedies from body-owned substances, hormones, diseases, in my new book, Fighting Fire with Fire. And I hope on the end of this year, we have Human Chemistry Part 1. And it will be an amazing book to see the new remedies, how they act on the situation. Because when you bring the right energy into the system, then the information of the cell will change in a healthy direction. And that's what we see, that's what I see very often into my patients. So you see, I act with my homeopathic remedies on a different way than my colleagues do mostly. Because I look to each patient to also in a pandemic or epidemic, to the symptoms of the patient itself. And that's always necessary to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Especially when there is a pandemic like this, what is an artificial virus and not a natural virus. So that's what I want to say about this subject.
Yes, thank you very much. One thing several people have asked, what was the first remedy that you mentioned before aconite? It was something aceticum, and even I didn't catch it. It was about the anxiety.
Quina arsenicosum.
No. There was an aceticum you mentioned at the beginning.
Aceticum acidum.
Oh, it was I see.
Acid.
Okay. And, yes, and as a general point, Ton, but any details we'll do in the final discussion, as a general point, what sort of potency were you giving these CoV-2 treatments, and what sort of repetition? Several people have asked.
When people are cured and there are left symptoms, I give the COVID-19.
Yeah.
In potential rakes of 4 to 4, and then from 12K to, or 12C to 1M. And that is for 8 weeks together with poly-EG.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Also in the same rakes.
But if you were treating somebody who came to you with the acute symptoms, what were you using? A 200 twice a day or a 1M daily or something?
When people come with an acute virus, I look to the symptoms of the patient. I never start with a nosode of this.
No, of course.
Do you understand what you can't use it when there is no disease and the family is very afraid. You can't give a solution of 30K daily, 7 days after each other, and they are protected for the virus.
Are you saying you can do or cannot do?
You can't do that. You can do.
It is possible to do that. Okay.
To do, but there is no need to advise this.
No.
Only when people has a fear.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, now, Ton, thank you very much indeed. Will you be able to hang on till the end to join in the discussion panel?
Yeah, how late you think it is?
Well, I don't know. We've got 2 more talks to come.
Okay, I will
We have
listen
a break.
to the common talks.
Yes, very
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Thank you. Right.
Yeah, welcome.
Yes. Could we now invite Bob Blair to do his presentation, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Got you, Bob. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I'm going to share the screen, so hopefully that's activated. Are you seeing me, Roger?
Yeah, seeing you live, bright and clear. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So my motivation for speaking today is primarily to signpost you to a remedy that I'm finding useful, which you won't have thought about probably because many of you won't have heard of it, or even if you have heard of it, you won't be getting information about it. It won't be appearing in your repertories for the simple reason that the proving hasn't been published yet. So I think I should just start by saying also that I haven't treated any confirmed cases of coronavirus for a very simple reason in the UK, that you cannot actually get tested unless you're a health service key worker or unless you're already in hospital. So everyone else with the symptoms of coronavirus is just told to stay home and self-isolate. So that having been said, I also really want to stress the point that I don't think there is one single remedy for this virus, but that there are a number of remedies, just like Tom has just been discussing. And this is one remedy that I'm finding useful. It's not the only remedy that I'm finding useful. This is one remedy that I'm finding useful. And I would just like to share it with you so that you can understand why I'm finding it relevant to this particular epidemic. So just to remind us what we're dealing with, this is the SARS coronavirus 2, which is the proximate cause of this pandemic disease. Just note that it's got this kind of protective capsule around the RNA. And I say the proximate cause because, as Peter said at the beginning, there are deeper fundamental kind of energetic causes at foot in the world that give context to this planetary response to the damage that humankind is doing to the planet. You could see this as the planet's kind of phage therapy to try and deal with this human pathogen that is really causing it a problem. So I'm particularly following Jeremy Sher and his colleagues, and they're pooling a lot of information, which is very useful. They're building up an incredible database from already in excess of 200 cases so that we can see the common and peculiar symptoms of the epidemic, and then look for a group of remedies that are relevant to it. So in some discussions, I've heard that there are some confusion what a genus epidemicus remedy is. So genus epidemicus means a group of remedies relevant to the epidemic, which means that if the disease was of a very fixed character, we might just need one remedy like belladonna for scarlet fever. But in what's characteristic of this pandemic and this disease actually is the huge variety of presentations it's coming with, which suggests that we're going to need a sizable group of remedies that's relevant to dealing with it. As Tom's already explained, you know, he's not just using a limited number of remedies, quite a variety of remedies there. So these are all the kind of front runners that Jeremy Sher and his colleagues are using. And the ones that I've put in bold are the ones that I've personally had experience with in this outbreak. The number of lines afterwards, each name, give you some indication to their relative frequency in terms of how frequently people are successfully prescribing these remedies for this epidemic. So aconite, of course, in the early stages. Ant tart is particularly useful in the later stages. Phosphorus seems to be, the most commonly prescribed remedy among Jeremy and his colleagues. Phos-Ac, stannum. Carbo-veg, not many people have used it, but I found it particularly useful. And I'm finding it particularly useful in headaches. Headaches seem to be a big part of this disease for some people. And those headaches that are responding to carbo-veg, or the whole picture that responds to carbo-veg, one of the indications that is taking me to carbo-veg is a sensation of constriction and tightness, like a vice, like a band around the head. One patient described it like her brain was too big for her skull, along with respiratory symptoms or along with digestive symptoms. So again, some people are presenting just with digestive symptoms, no respiratory symptoms at all, sometimes just with diarrhea. And one of the characteristics of this virus is its relapsing nature, so that people seem that they're ill, they get treated, or they come through it. They seem to have been in recovery. They seem to be doing okay. And then they suddenly kind of collapse back. And that's when some of the more severe manifestations and complications come, actually often after a period of improvement, and then there's a relapse and a sudden collapse, or just a more moderate relapse into your previous symptoms. So one strange, rare and peculiar symptom that Jeremy's colleagues have noticed is this difficult respiration ameliorated by lying down. Mostly when people have difficulty breathing, they want to sit up. So ant tart, bryonia, calibic, phosphorus, and sulfur are all remedies that people are finding relevant that are coming up in this rubric. So sulfur is Paul Herskew's leading remedy. He's also making use of lycopodium and some of the other remedies that Jeremy's colleagues are. Spigelia is one that might not seem particularly obvious, but it comes up in this rubric. It comes up in many of the other symptoms. People have used it, and particularly where there's kind of sharp neuralgic pains, particularly around the head. And then our friend ozonum, which I put in bold because of its relevance. I can really see its relevance to this particular outbreak. So some additional remedies that people have tried and used and got good effects with: antimonium arsenicosum, croton tiglium, hepsulf, lobelia purpurescens, which is a close relative of lobelia, but with a particular flu picture, influenza picture, and of course stannum. Some other remedies that his colleagues have suggested are adamas. The ones in italics have been used to good effect. Adamas, which is diamond, very dry feeling, almost like there's kind of dust in your respiratory tract sometimes. Carbofullerenum. So fullerine's got a quick mention by Peter. Again, a pure carbon remedy. Corvus corax, the raven, a bird remedy, a social bird remedy. And radon is a remedy suggested by Jeremy for the complications, particularly interstitial pneumonia, because radon is a substance that can cause that pathology. Now, what all of those remedies have in common is that they all belong to the group of remedies relevant to the treatment of AIDS, as does ozonum. Ozonum also belongs to this group. So let's look at the energy pattern of AIDS. So first of all, the feeling of a lack of adequate borders and protective boundaries. This came up particularly strongly, a strong point in the nosode, in the proving of the nosode. And what, in terms of a human being, what is this protective boundary that we're lacking? It's an immune system. So an effective immune system. And that means there's susceptibility to external forces, influence, and entities entering in with very damaging effects. And the response that that produces in people is the need for self-isolation. And also there's this sense of alienation that goes along with this. An alienation from the world, from the other people in the world, from nature, from the planet. Even for all of that outward alienation is actually a reflection of an inner state of alienation. There's somehow an alienation with their true nature, because they're so busy having to be what society demands them to be in order to be accepted by society and not to be socially excluded. People begin to get out of touch with their own nature. And essentially, our nature as human beings should be that we're symbiotic organisms in symbiosis with this planet that we live on, which provides us our life support system as we hurtle through space. And yet, collectively and individually, we are moving further and further from that until we are engaging in completely pathogenic activity as far as the planet is concerned. So part of the response of this feeling of vulnerability is creation of borders and boundaries, of barriers, shutting down exchange between outside and inside. So one of the remedies that's particularly belongs to this group that's not particularly relevant to COVID-19, but latex. You can think of latex rubber as being particularly relevant to the treatment of AIDS. So part of this energy pattern is also about withdrawing, concealing, cutting off. You could say hiding in the closet, putting this protective facade so that other people can't see your weakness and that you don't expose your weakness, your vulnerability. So then let's compare that to the dynamics underlying COVID-19, that disease state, collapsing of an apparently functioning system. So when I say the dynamics of COVID-19, I'm talking about the energy pattern that we see in individual patients physically and what their bodies are doing, but also the energetic context in the world that existed in the world before this disease arose, and also the situation that's now come about in terms of our collective response to this disease. Collapsing of apparently functioning system. From influx, there is no capacity to deal with, whether this is a national health service, a national economy, your own personal body systems. Hence, closing down and restricting movement across boundaries, whether that's national boundaries or boundaries where gaseous exchange occurs, closing down of movement, isolating and insulating from contact with the outside, with forcefully discharged expulsions, whether that's foreign nationals that you don't want in your country inside your boundaries, or some discharge of diarrhea or sputum or something that your body's trying to rid itself of some toxicity. So common features of remedies relevant to AIDS. So AIDS is the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. But we could also say, as Ton alluded to, that these remedies are also relevant to what we could call the AIDS and immunization damage syndrome. So feeling of isolation and alienation. So you can imagine, this also applies to autistic patients, feeling of isolation or alienation. Separation from the world and other people. And many of these remedies have this kind of feeling or delusion that there is some dividing barrier or glass or screen between you and the world and the other people in it, which insulates you and isolates and separates you, and means that you can't even make proper eye contact with other people. And here we all are. This is the situation we're in now, divided from each other with these screens, behind firewalls, hoping that we've all got adequate antivirus protection. And yet trying to reach out to each other. There's a desire to connect with people that accept you and make you feel you belong rather than feeling socially excluded. Also a desire to connect with the natural world, which is what many of us have had the opportunity to do since we've been in lockdown. So the remedy that I'm finding useful is Cryptococcus Neoformans. It was proved by Jeremy's Dynamis School in 2008. But as I say, it's unpublished. You won't find it cropping up in any of your repertorizations. I am quite familiar with it because I was a prover, and I've also worked a lot on the collation of the proving. So what is Cryptococcus neoformans? It's a kind of dimorphic yeast, so it's a fungus. This is what it looks like under the electron microscope. Dimorphic means that it has two ways of being, two shapes, two forms. It can change just, so if you compare with Candida albicans, that's a similar dimorphic yeast in that it can behave as a yeast cell, asexually reproducing by budding and producing an identical clone kind of daughter cell. And also, when the environment is right, it can take on a hyphal form, or it produces like a hyphal mycelia, strands of fungus, which can then reproduce sexually. So another microscopic image here, you can see this dark protective cell wall around the outside, and in the middle at the bottom, you see there's also a protective capsule encapsulating it. So this dark cell wall is actually dark because it contains melanin, which protects from ultraviolet radiation. So that is to this fungus what the ozone layer is to us. It protects us. Interestingly, this fungus is part of a group of fungi called radiotrophic fungi. And it's it is the first organism to recolonize or to colonize the inside of the nuclear reactor in Chernobyl. And what it's doing here, radiotrophic fungi basically use the melanin in them to convert ionizing radiation into a useful energy that they can use. So basically, these fungi are using melanin to make use of ionizing radiation in the same way that plants are able to use chlorophyll to convert sunlight into energy that they can use. So there's a connection here with radioactivity. Radioactivity is also something that damages the immune system. So Cryptococcus neoformans is a fungus that infects immunocompromised patients, such as patients with AIDS or that have been receiving radiotherapy, and it especially targets the lungs. It can cause interstitial pneumonia in these patients, which is one of the dangerous complications that we're seeing in the COVID-19 disease. When bone marrow is infected, patients can present with symptoms that mimic aplastic anemia, so shortness of breath and fatigue particularly. So this is particularly relevant to COVID-19 because the virus is expressing proteins which then latch onto ions in the hemoglobin, which basically means that then the red blood cells are compromised in their ability to transport oxygen, which means when they're arriving at the lung cells are not able to kind of get carbon dioxide out, get oxygen in. Toxicity is building up in the lung cells. And so we were seeing a pneumonitis and inflammation in the lungs as secondary to this problem in the blood in many cases, and not as a result of pneumonia. And then you're getting acute respiratory distress syndrome with typical ground glass opacities seen in COVID-19, which is also can be produced by Cryptococcus infections. They can also produce disseminated intravascular coagulation, which is one of the questions that came up on the chat. This is what doctors are seeing in COVID-19 in the last few days. They're particularly talking about it, that platelets are coagulating and causing clots that are clogging up dialysis machines for people on kidney dialysis. They are causing strokes in relatively young adults, in their 30s even. And also when you've got this going on, it ties up the platelets, so then hemorrhaging can occur. So let's just have a look at the respiratory symptoms in the proving that are relevant to COVID-19. Cough with fever, with sore throat, with blocked sinuses and nasal discharge. Cough on waking or waking from cough. Dry cough. Dry cough worse at night. Dry cough with hoarseness of the voice. With pain in the chest in small spots. So pain in small spots is quite characteristic of a whole group of fungi, many of which are in our materia medica, which includes Cryptococcus. But and this is something that I've seen in some of my patients, that they're talking about this pain in the chest in small spots. Could be felt deep in the lungs or more towards the surface. Dry cough with difficult respiration, spasmodic tickly cough, or a rattling cough where there's more mucus down in the lungs. Difficult respiration. One prover said it feels as if every inhalation will be their last. Difficult respiration, wheezing with pain in the lung. Difficult respiration ameliorated by expectoration, which is a feature that's been noted by many of Jeremy Scher's colleagues. But then if you are able to expectorate, so the expectoration is difficult to produce, but if you are able to produce it, it produces a good amelioration of your breathing. Expectoration painful. Expectoration green, so relevant to when there's kind of some secondary bacterial infection. Expectoration ameliorated while lying. Again, this is a strange, rare and peculiar symptom that has been noted in some patients with this kind of, with a more severe respiratory symptoms of COVID-19, when they've got this really sticky, gunky mucus in their lungs. It feels like sort of thick honey stuck down in their lungs, and they can only cough it out when they're lying down, which is a bit of a peculiarity. Only on lying down, this prover was able to produce any expectoration. Feeling of weakness in the lungs. Lungs, a sensation if a foreign object has been inhaled and is settling further down at the base of the lungs with each inhalation. So again, I've had cases which talk about this feeling like there's something stuck. They're not even saying phlegm or mucus or catarrh. They're saying something is stuck, feels like something is stuck here in the lungs. And if only they could cough it out, they would feel better. Lungs, pain as if something is tearing at the lungs while coughing to produce expectoration. A deep pain at the top right lung. Hemoptysis, so coughing up blood, produced in the proving. Sneezing, nasal discharge, watery nasal discharge. So like the first initial, you could say almost like the aconite stages of COVID-19. Chest tightness with cough and difficult respiration. Very common among the respiratory cases of COVID-19. So other local and general symptoms, head pain, aggravated on coughing. I've had quite a few patients where actually the most uncomfortable symptom is the headache, severe headache. And just remember that Cryptococcus can infect the meninges, so you can get cryptococcal meningitis. And I remember part of my proving experience was the most painful headache I've ever experienced in my life. So headaches with all sorts of modalities and sensations, but particularly aggravated on coughing in this COVID-19. So fever with chills during cough, and the prover expressed this as false heat with deep coldness. So extreme yin deficiency, which you could say is the pattern of the energy pattern that the whole planet is suffering from at the moment, that we have this high energy output as a human race. We're engaged in all this high energy activity, but that's being fueled by a kind of overconsumption, which is depleting the natural resources of the planet and of ourselves. We're running around in this busyness of activity and depleting ourselves and making ourselves susceptible to illness. Bitter taste, tongue-coated white. So in China, in the Chinese cases in hospital, these are the kind of things that they noted, because in Chinese medicine, those things are significant. Violent, forceful or urgent expulsions or discharge at a mental and physical level, seen in this proving and seen in COVID-19 patients. They might have emotional discharges, they might have physical discharges. Diarrhea, like gushing diarrhea. So nausea, gassiness, vomiting, gushing diarrhea. Again, this group of fungi remedies, they all seem to share kind of cholera-like digestive symptoms. And some of these COVID-19 patients, their only presenting complaints are in the digestive system, with nausea, with gassiness, and particularly with diarrhea. I think there were nearly 50 cases in China that just were presenting with these kind of symptoms, no respiratory symptoms. So again, the vast variety of the presentation suggests that we're going to need more than just a handful of remedies for this disease. Extreme fatigue. This is one of the real characteristic things of this illness, regardless of whether you have any other symptoms or what other symptoms, sometimes no other symptoms. Extreme fatigue was coming up really strongly in this remedy. So prover 19, a very sensitive and very experienced prover, this is part of her experience in the first day or two. Lack of energy and exhausted. I can't get up and I can't move. Weakness in all my limbs. So this is what some of the COVID-19 patients are describing. They can't get up out of bed or off the sofa, even to get to the bathroom. Feels like too much effort. I feel totally flat, no energy. I could go to sleep, like my life force has been taken out. I feel so listless and out of it. I could just let go and die. This is what some people are saying in COVID-19. It's like, I haven't even got the energy to draw another breath. I might as well just let go and die. Unplugged, not connected, detached. This reminds us a little bit of ozone, of course. Everything feels cramped and constricted and tight. So a lot of constriction and tightness in the lungs and the chest in COVID-19, but also in the head, sometimes in your muscles as well. Prover 19 felt this experience had come on so suddenly and dramatically. She was even wondering if a virus was involved, or that the virus had become modified by the proving, but this virus consciousness was there. A week later, she's writing, "This is an alien remedy. Does it mean that I'm now part alien? Does it change my DNA? I'm totally losing myself. I don't know who or what I am." Loss of identity. This is a few weeks later. Loss of identity of the coat that identifies me. So remember, Peter in Ozone was talking about this coat, this transparent coat, this thing that should be identifying you to the outside world, to the immune system. Are you one of us, or are you some hostile alien that needs to be destroyed and kicked out and expelled? So loss of identity, really big in this remedy. Confusion of identity is really big in fungi remedies. It's also really big in what I call the AIDS miasm, or the remedies that are particularly relevant to the treatment of AIDS. This loss of identity, confusion of identity, confusion of gender identity, confusion around sexual identity, sexuality, whatever it is, it comes in very many different guises. I can be anybody, anything, anytime. So I choose every moment. I need to be true to one's soul. So getting back from being alienated from oneself, one has to get back to being in touch with one's true being, one's true nature. And then something a bit more curative sounding, about 4 weeks into the proving. I don't care about making money. I'm looking at a bigger picture, ecology, save the planet. And this is one of the more positive aspects that's coming out of the COVID-19 lockdown. People are having time to stop being busy doing and start reverting to being human beings, getting in touch with themselves and the planet and what we've done to it and what we need. And this is the message that COVID-19 is giving us, that we need a drastic change in how we behave towards the planet. Because if we go back to business as usual, if we just suppress this epidemic and make as if, you know, it's not giving us a message, if we don't absorb that message and change and act on that, well then sooner or later, it's probably going to be sooner rather than later, the planet will throw us up something else we have to deal with to focus our minds, our consciousness, whether that's some climate, environmental catastrophe, or some other kind of disease epidemic. We need to learn from this. So themes include fear and risk of contamination. So in the proving, one dream. Once I was infected with the alien virus, I would begin to turn into an alien myself. I'm wondering if there is time to stop the blood-borne poison spreading through my veins to irreversibly contaminate my entire body. There were visions of people cleaning their hands on touching absolutely anything, people cleaning their hands because of an unclean feeling. So as a human disease pathogen, you can say this kind of falls into the same category as nosodes. All the nosodes have this kind of fear and risk and consciousness of kind of dirt and contamination and infectiveness and the need to clean their hands. So I have a colleague in Germany that's using Streptococcus very usefully in this epidemic, and that's one of the prime indicators he's using that particular nosode. Big theme around connection versus disconnection, which I'm saying is part of the energy of AIDS, which ozone also connects with very well. So in this proving, particularly this theme of wanting to nurture the family and others you identify with while pushing all other people, all others out beyond a safe containment boundary. So a different prover 2, desire to keep people at a distance, desire not to be touched or kissed, which is a new, incredibly unusual and intense symptom that she experienced. So about a week into the proving, she's saying, as if the world is separated into my people. Her consciousness is that it's as if the world is separated into my people. I mean, family, friends, relatives, all the people who I know, and then the other world, unknown and probably hostile people. And I'm taking care of my people. So this is like the immune system. It identifies people. It separates, it wants to identify cells, it wants to identify people. Are you one of us, or have you got some alien identity? So we could call AIDS also the alien identity destruction system. But this is part of what's going on in ozone and oxygen as remedies. This feeling of, you know, I'm all alone in a hostile, vulnerable in a hostile world, and I would prefer to be in this kind of protected, encapsulated inside this kind of protected, familiar womb-like zone. But if I'm in there, then I'm feeling too trapped and restricted and suffocated, and I need to get out again. So this prover was feeling unreasonable aggression against unknown people, an impulse to push others away, to push the boundaries further out because of this feeling of vulnerability. This is what is commonly seen in AIDS. In the remedies, yeah, some remedies relevant to AIDS can develop a very hard-hearted kind of unfeeling attitude. Anacardium is one of these remedies. Latex is one of these remedies. Polystyrene plastic is one of those remedies, though I wouldn't say any of those are particularly relevant to COVID-19. She's saying, I have a boundary of judgment around me. All the crazy thoughts are inside me, in my mind, but this cuticle surrounding bark allows only the selected, acceptable part of them to pass through to the outer world. So there's, again, this covering, this coat, this kind of protective capsule around you, like the ozone layer is a protective capsule around planet Earth, like the COVID-19 virus itself has this pleomorphic sphere around it, encapsulating it, like the Cryptococcus itself has this protective capsule around it. And like you can imagine someone infected with AIDS in the 80s, it was very important for them to not give out their positive diagnosis, their positive test status, because they wanted, that would kind of blow their cover. So they need to remain covered to be protected, because once you lose that cover and you're exposed, then you're out, like you're out of the closet, then people can target you as having some alien identity that they want to destroy or at least socially exclude, like you're some kind of social leper. So you only present what's acceptable, but then in living out that identity, you lose contact with your own true nature and you start to feel alienated from yourself and you get this confusion of identity. So further relevant dream themes, and this is a vast proving, but some of the themes that are relevant to COVID-19, genetics and genetic mutations, various dreams involving that theme. Trans-species and shape-shifting transformation. So of course this virus, the reservoir is bats, they've come through some intermediary host, maybe a pangolin or something else, and they've mutated. And whenever these viruses replicate, there's a good chance of mutation, and replication is even happening even faster among the bats that are infected with a particular fungus, the white nose syndrome fungus. Networks, connections, and communications, very important for the spread of any epidemic, but also for us trying to keep in contact with each other. Fungi network the natural world. So in the plant kingdom, fungi attach to the roots and then they network different plants in a forest together and allow them to communicate with each other and transport even substances to each other. Mirrored pairs. In at least one ward of COVID-19 patients, it was observed that there were patients going into their symptoms in pairs. So two people together would start displaying the same symptoms. So you can imagine these are the identical clone cells asexually reproducing. Pollution, waste, and plastic bags, a big part of the world picture, the context in which this disease has arisen, and also relevant, of course, to ozone. Safe behavior versus risky behavior. Very, it's a theme among some of these fungi, but also it's a big theme in AIDS as well, safe versus risky behavior. So why I think this remedy is particularly relevant is that it covers the pictures of COVID, or the picture of COVID-19 broadly and deeply in terms of the pathologies, in terms of even actually down to the microscopic level of what these organisms look like. But it covers the pathologies, particularly the more end stage pathologies, the local and general physical signs and symptoms, the peculiar symptoms and patient expressions, the mental, emotional, behavioral features of the patients, the collective responses and attitudes in the world that this COVID-19 is bringing out, and the underlying energetic disharmony. So, you know, this is something I've absorbed from my teachers, Rajan Sankaran and Jeremy Sher, that your most assured success when you choose a remedy that not only covers the symptoms that are manifesting in the patient, but the underlying energy disturbance that is expressing itself through those symptoms. So how am I using this remedy in my own practice? Firstly, for those patients that are really asking for prophylaxis because of their fear or their concern, or because they have some underlying health issues that make them vulnerable. And yeah, so that's a category of patient that I am using prophylaxis with, people that are kind of vulnerable of a certain age, and particularly with underlying lung pathology. I will use Cryptococcus Neoformans in a 200C potency. I'm telling them to take it 1 pill every week for 3 doses, and then 1 pill every 10 days for 3 doses. And many of these patients are already taking, during the flu season, because of their vulnerability, they're already taking Influenzinum 30C on a 1 dose every month as a kind of prophylaxis against flu, which I find really effective. So I'm saying we'll continue with that, because influenza, this coronavirus is not the same as an influenza virus, but clinically the manifestations are very similar. So on the principle of similars, why not? So I'm just getting them to take this for a few more months, and then every week or every 10 days taking the Cryptococcus. And it's not that I'm expecting or even seeing that in every case that this is going to stop them getting the virus, but that it will modify the virus when they do get it, how it presents clinically in those patients. So then in treatment, I guess I'm using it, you could compare, the way I'm using it, it could be compared to how many people would use Oscillococcinum in influenza. It's interesting, the coccus aspect of this, Cryptococcus, Oscillococcus, Streptococcus. Now, pyrogen might be another remedy we could think of in some of the more septic states of this illness. But going back to how I'm using it, Oscillococcinum is a remedy that many people, particularly in France, would use for influenza. So in the first day or two, using it very frequently, I would typically be suggesting people now alternate aconite, preferably aconite 200 with Cryptococcus 200, maybe taking 1 dose every couple of hours. So take aconite 200, 2 hours later, Cryptococcus 200, 2 hours later, aconite 200, like that for the first day or two. And then if symptoms are persisting, with a flu, I might then say, okay, carry on taking Oscillococcinum every day, and then a symptomatically indicated remedy. But in this COVID-19, I'm telling people, okay, carry on using Cryptococcus, but now in response to the changing symptom picture, find a remedy that is particularly pertinent to the often local symptoms that are then coming up while you're taking the Cryptococcus. So we could compare this to how Hahnemann was using sulfur once he'd come up with his theory of SORA. All his chronic disease patients that were not infected with a venereal disease, he was saying this is due to some infection with what he identified as the soric miasm. And for those patients, he was giving sulfur, sulfur, sulfur all the time. And then alongside sulfur, whatever symptoms came up prominently, he would find a remedy from among his antisoric remedies that particularly suited that presenting symptom. So likewise here, I'm continuing to give Cryptococcus 200, maybe 2 or 3 times a day. And people, while they're taking that, even if they've got other symptoms of the virus, their energy seems to remain relatively good. Their mood, their outlook seems to remain relatively positive. They're not going into severe respiratory symptoms, even if they've got really severe underlying respiratory pathology. And then if there's a particular symptom that's being thrown out, you can almost say we're putting them into approving of Cryptococcus as a stronger dissimilar disease to prevent them going into the full-blown COVID-19 picture. And then some other symptom that comes up, like if it's this constrictive headache that comes up, I will then be alternating remedy like carbo-veg that's indicated by that symptom with the Cryptococcus and continuing like that. Someone the other day, she didn't have bad respiratory symptoms or difficulty breathing, but she was feeling a crushing sensation in the chest. So then what I'm doing, I'm looking among that group of remedies that Jeremy Scher's colleagues have found particularly useful for this epidemic. And I'm just limiting my search to those remedies, and I'm looking for a remedy that covers that particular symptom. So antimonium tart covered that particular symptom. 24 hours later, that patient is doing well. She hasn't got that symptom anymore, and she's more or less over everything. But if I'm finding a symptom isn't really responding, then I'll go up to a Cryptococcus 1M. So yeah, what I'd say is if I'm not getting as good a response as I feel I want to be getting, I will switch from a Cryptococcus 200 to a Cryptococcus 1M, and likewise with the more symptomatically indicated remedy that I'm using for the foreground symptoms, then I might switch that up to a 1M if I'm not getting a response in a 200. So basically, I'm alternating after the first day or two. I'm alternating Cryptococcus 200 or 1M, maybe about 3 times a day, with some other. So that's like the background remedy, and then what other local symptom is coming up in the foreground, I would choose a remedy from among what you could call the genus Epidemicus remedies, this group of remedies that have got a proven relevance to this COVID-19. I'm just choosing a remedy from that matches this particular symptom. And the reason I'm doing this, I wanted to develop a protocol that my patients with their kits could use. So, you know, we're using all of those remedies I showed on the first slide are pretty much common remedies that patients with home prescribing kits are going to have access to. So I just get them to order in the Cryptococcus remedy to use alongside that. And that's kind of taking the pressure off me so that they're not having to phone me up. They're getting good results doing that. And then those cases that I am dealing with, I'm not having to spend a lot of time and thought in putting into those cases. I'm just able to use that kind of fairly small number of remedies, but a variety of different remedies in conjunction with Cryptococcus. So just to finish with, those are the different pharmacies that I know for a fact that you can get hold of this remedy from: Cemon in Italy, Helios in the UK, and Remedia in Austria. So if you're further afield, if you're in India or if you're in America, I'm not sure where you would get these remedies from, but I would say order them in now from Helios and get them in the post because I think it's a useful remedy. But to be honest, if I didn't have Cryptococcus, I think I'd be happy to be using ozone in a very similar way that I'm using Cryptococcus. So I was really interested in hearing Peter's presentation. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. There were 1 or 2 questions coming up. So I think you've probably answered them. So where crypto isn't available, you wouldn't turn to another fungus like Candida albs. You would now be thinking, oh, that looks, ozone might just about cover me.
Because energetically, I would be looking for something. This, to me, this whole outbreak is to do with the energy of AIDS, what I call the AIDS miasm.
Right.
And so Candida albicans, I don't associate so strongly with that energy. A remedy like ozone, I really strongly associate with the energy of that remedy and with the suffocation and the respiration. Yeah, for sure. I would, if I didn't have Cryptococcus, I think ozone would be where I'd be looking to next.
Well, that's really nice that 2 speakers, each presenting what for some of us is a new remedy, are able to link them in a way that we can see the parallels and add to the weapons in our own armory for when we're needing. Bob, are you able to stay on for the question and answer session?
Indeed. Yeah. And just in response to that, I'd also like to add that, you know, Jeremy Scher, when he's talking about treating epidemics, he's very keen about the idea, well, we've got to treat the energetic source of this epidemic, the underlying energy, the context out of which, you know, the planet is suffering from a disease, a pan-global disease. You know, 1 or 2 degrees rise in temperature. It's suffering from its lungs being attacked in the Amazon, so we can't have enough exchange between carbon dioxide and oxygen. It's, you know, you talk about cytokine storms and cascades, but literally this is what we're having. We're having storms in our environment and other cascading natural disasters, and you know, complete disruption of homeostasis. So this is the disease that the planet is suffering from, and deaths not just of cells and of human beings, but of whole species. And its response is to throw this COVID-19, this SARS virus out to attack the pathogen, which is us humans. So unless we do something to change the energy afoot in the world, then we're going to have difficulties ahead of us.
Yes, no doubt. Okay, Bob, thank you very much indeed. Time is marching on, so I think we should now ask Dr. Farokh Master to give us his presentation. Dr. Farokh Bhai, you are there?
Yes, sir.
So I'll ask the hosts to put you on. Ah, hello, Ji.
So, welcome all of you.
Dr. Farokh, we can't hear you very clearly.
Can you now hear me? Can you hear me?
No, it's very, very, very faint. Perhaps use the headset.
Now can you hear me?
Now it is clearer.
Okay, good. So friends, today I'll be sharing you my experience regarding COVID-19. It all started treating patients from United States in the beginning, cases that were referred to me mostly by medical doctors and the naturopathic physicians who came in contact with COVID-19 positive cases and who were asking for help. And so on an average, I was seeing about 6 to 10 patients every single day. And I started this from around second week of March. So my experience treating such patients is almost 1.5 months old. But recently, Government of India has allowed in my hospital where I work to give homeopathic medicine along with the modern medicine to COVID-19 patients. And so the experience has become much more larger. And I would like to share. First of all, remember, it's not very easy to dispense homeopathic medicine to a COVID patient who is seriously ill, because most of them are on respirator. Most of them have got multiple tubes. So giving oral medication to COVID patient is next to impossible. So most of the time we are rubbing the medicine on the soles and the palms of the patient and occasionally on the forehead. So we take the indicated medicine and rub it on the forehead, palms and soles for 2 minutes. And then we keep on repeating the medicine depending on the intensity of the symptoms. Many homeopaths claim that they have helped COVID patients, but let me tell you, it is a self-limiting disease in the initial stage. Majority of the people with good immune system, they recover within 7 days, whether you give homeopathy or you don't give homeopathy. But if you are giving homeopathy, many times we take the credit that we cured patients with COVID. Many homeopaths throughout the world have suggested, somebody have suggested prophylactic, some people have suggested a pandemic, genus epidemicus. And some people have really treated patients on individual symptoms. Now, what is true and what is false? There are two sides of it. We have to see both the sides. Andresen has given a very beautiful description of influenza epidemic in his webinar, where clearly our masters believed that the cause is not outside, but cause is within. And even in Kant's philosophy, if you very clearly read, he has mentioned about viruses. And he has clearly confirmed the view that there is no viruses in influenza. That's what the Kant says. I am not saying like that. But the problem basically starts from something that is wrong within our own immune system, our own weakness, our own vital force. And that is how basically we fall sick and develops various illnesses. So that basic principle of homeopathy should never be forgotten. And that is true for even bacterial illnesses, fungal illnesses, whatever it is. So I will always respect that opinion of Kant and various other legends who has in the past described this philosophical view for infection. Now going back to COVID and influenza, as rightly said by many of the speakers today and in the past, that the symptoms do resemble. But not every patient has got all the symptoms. And that is why we have to wait for the symptom picture to develop before giving any remedy randomly. So if you are going to give influenzum to every patient, if you are going to give camphor to every patient, if you are going to give arsenic to every patient who comes to you, without individualizing them, then I think so, this is not the right way to go about. But you should wait for the totality of symptoms to develop. And this totality of the symptoms to develop will take 2 to 3 days in the beginning. So in the first 7 days, it's not that on the very first day, every homeopath will be able to decide what remedy to give. At least I was not able to decide. So maybe after 48 hours, when the picture came up, I was able to decide. Now in the first 7 days, many remedies came up. I'm not going to describe you the materia medica from the book, but I'm going to describe you the main features that I considered that were very important to differentiate the remedy. Okay? So that will be only 4 or 5 symptoms which I'll be telling, which really help me to select the remedy and then differentiate them with another seemingly indicated remedy. So the first remedy that I will talk about is arsenic album. Mostly with high fever around 102 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And that fever was there for 2 to 3 days. This is what we call as the prodrome. At that time, the thing that I confirmed was hot face or heat in the face, craves for open air even though the whole body is chilled. That's very important. Aggravation in the afternoon around 1 p.m. or aggravation after midnight. So there are 2 aggravating factors. And fever was followed by chills. Eating and drinking makes the patient worse in general. Thirst is 2 marks, sometimes in small sips or sometimes even in good quantity. But tongue is coated white, and it's a thin white coating and not a thick white coating of entim fruit. So that's another thing. Mark anxiety and need for company. This is what we saw in arsenic, and that picture which I am describing of arsenic will not be mingled with any other remedy. These are the sure symptoms of arsenic. Cases which received bryonia are usually slow progressing, but the presenting complaint for bryonia was aches and pains. Heat was accompanied by perspiration. So that was very important. And there was chill also with fever, but chill was more in the fingers, in the hands. Aversion to warm room and warm temperature was confirmed. And most of the symptoms were worse in the night, as the night starts. In the repertory, the beginning of the night time is 9 p.m. So basically, we saw that period as an aggravating factor. Headaches were there, mostly occipital. Majority, I say 70% of bryonia we saw had an occipital headache and a left-sided frontal headache. There was a running nose, and it was acrid and burning. Irritable, dull, and was not cooperative patient. So will not take part in your case taking very happily. So that kind of patient we saw when we are talking about bryonia. When we thought of belladonna, I'm just taking basic remedies to begin with. There was a rapid onset. And in that rapid onset, the fever touched 104, 105 within few hours. Aggravation time, of course, was afternoon, the whole afternoon. So between 12 and 4, you can say that. But the prime was, of course, between 2 and 3 p.m. Again, there was a redness of the face, but worse from any motion. We always talk of motion aggravates and bryonia, but I think so in belladonna we form lot of motion and especially jarring. The slightest touch. Belladonna people that we treated were totally thirstless. They also had a severe headaches anywhere in the head, so no particular part, but usually severe pain in the eyes and sore throat. So with belladonna, we started seeing sore throat, which we never saw much in arsenic and bryonia, even though repertory may be having that. But as I told you, I'm just sharing my experience and what we saw. And then with this high fever, person going into delirium. That ends belladonna. The next remedy that we saw in the beginning stage, that is the first 7 days, is Eupatorium perfoliatum. Now, Eupatorium perfoliatum comes and resembles bryonia quite a lot. In fact, they are the shadow remedies, because in Eupatorium also the chills, especially the chills, begin at 9 a.m. But everything starts in the back in Eupatorium, so that's very characteristic. And if you drink water, your chills are much more worse. Very chilly patient. At the same time, craving for cold drinks, cold water, cold food. One patient even asked for ice cream. The sweat is always scanty, and the aggravation time is always between 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Patient can be restless, like arsenic. There is a watery coryza, but here what we saw is excruciating low backache and the patient was moaning with the pain. So this is the picture that we saw in Euphatorium perforatum, severe excruciating backache and then moaning with the pain. We jump to the next remedy, Gelsemium. Here the debility, weakness came from the day one, and the fever was insidious onset. Patient was unwell for many days before the fever reached the peak. And we could see fine tremors in the patient. Again, the aggravating time in the morning, usually between 10 and 11 a.m. Thirst was minimal, but the headache was occiput radiating to the forehead. So that's very peculiar, from occiput to forehead. It was a dull pain. Person was able to hardly lift the head from the pillow. The face was flushed, but the tongue was yellow coating, and patient was dull and low spirited. Nothing great about the mental symptoms. The last remedy that I want to discuss about in the first stage is Nux Vomica. Now let me tell you, in the past, in the epidemics of influenza, the Siberian influenza epidemic, the European influenza epidemic, many homeopaths suggested Nux Vomica as a specific for that particular epidemic, and many homeopaths gave this remedy as a prevention for influenza. So let us see what kind of Nux Vomica we saw in COVID. First of all, sensitivity. Sensitivity to many things, light, sound, noise. Fever was very high on the first day, but the characteristic was burning of the face, and the heat was burning with chills, needs lot of covering. Even a little draft of air like Hepar sulf will aggravate the patient, and better by hot. And remember, Nux is one remedy in acute condition, better by warm drinks and warm food like arsenic and chelidonium. Severe headaches and severe sore throat. The throat was totally raw. Everything was better by warm application and warm drinks. The body ache was better by warmth. Nature-wise, of course, irritability, but overexcitement. So that was the first week that we could see patients. The second week of COVID patients, I was hardly able to see, honestly, because I was not consulted by many patients. So I don't have an update for you. But I was basically consulted for respiratory failure. Patients who have undergone severe respiratory failure were having breathing difficulties. I think so Bob Blair and Peter Gajers have already talked a lot about the respiratory symptoms when they were describing the ozone and Cryptococcus and AIDS nosebleed. Now, here I am not talking about individual symptoms because all of them were under respirator. So when you are on respirator or mechanical ventilation, patient cannot talk. So most of the judgment, most of the talking of case taking was done on pathological report, the pathological finding, the physical examination that were conveyed to me by the medical doctor, the intensivists, the relatives, everyone put together. So this is what my data collection was, and not from the patient's own word. But definitely the doctors did mention what happened prior to this situation. So even those symptoms were very, very important for me to understand about this particular remedy. So some days back, I had also given a webinar related to coronavirus. So let me tell you some of the observations. The first remedy that I would like to talk about, and that is hydrocyanic acid, because this is one remedy which I would like to share with you all. Let me open the repertory.
Have you got a screen you can share with us, Farooq Bhai?
The repertory. Not this. Repertory. Radar. Go on. Okay. So this is the repertory that I use. Now somebody was talking about cytokine release syndrome, and somebody was telling it is not there in the repertory. It is already there in the synthesis repertory. So those who are using synthesis repertory, which I feel is very useful to me in my practice, you will see these group of remedies. You can click a picture if you want, just to let you know. Okay, so the first thing that you will see is, as soon as the person lies down in hydrocyanic acid, the person's respiratory rate increases. So you can look under the rubric respiration over here, accelerated. That is the main rubric of hydrocyanic acid. And then you can take this rubric in repertorization. The second thing that you will see is arrested. Now, based on these two rubrics, you can also look under asphyxia. So, asphyxia, where the oxygen partial pressure within the artery goes much more down, and the carbon dioxide partial pressure increases a lot in the artery. So we do what is known as blood gas analysis. This is the time when you will see that there will be a strong respiratory acidosis in the picture, and because of this oxygen going down, the saturation will go down. Once the saturation goes down, we give to the patient what is known as oxygen supply in two forms. Either we give what is known as CPAP, or we put the patient on mechanical ventilation when the saturation falls below 90. Okay. So now let us see something more. First thing is difficulty in breathing. So difficulty in breathing with constriction of the throat. So that is accompanied by throat constriction. You will see hydrocyanic acid. So here the people, so before putting the patient on ventilator, these were the symptoms that they can complain, that there are severe choking in the throat, they cannot breathe, the respiration gets arrested, and they start what is known as gasping. So the type of respiration is totally gasping when you are talking of a remedy, hydrocyanic acid. And then you will also see it is impeded and obstructed. So as if the person feels he cannot breathe deeply because it is impeded and obstructed. When there is a lot of secretion, the respiration becomes much more rattling in hydrocyanic acid. It's a later stage. So you can see rattling. And then finally, the stertorous breathing comes. Beyond that, I cannot explain to you because then the person goes on ventilator. So you may not be able to see. And if you see over here, how beautifully hydrocyanic acid comes as a very top remedy. But there are also some generals which I can talk about hydrocyanic acid, which can help you to understand this remedy in a little better way. So when I'm talking about general, they are always better in open air. Now here in ICU, you cannot find better in open air. But when I'm talking about the remedy as a general, nothing to do with an ICU picture. So basically they are better in open air. That's very, very important. Another very important thing that you will see over here is having history of cerebrovascular accident in the past. Hydrocyanic people are literally indicated in old people where there is usually a history of what I said, cardiovascular accident. Another very important thing you will look is under the respiratory collapse. And if you see collapse, and then under collapse, you look under accompanied by lung complaints. I think so the only remedy is hydrocyanic acid. So that's another very important thing. It's one remedy where there are no discharges. Usually discharges are suppressed in hydrocyanic acid. So if you're talking about perspiration or running nose or something like that, no. Usually they are totally suppressed. You can see over here hydrocyanic acid. So you don't see that perspiration part of veratrum, but you see the dryness like camphor in this particular remedy. Another very important thing that you will see over here is the sense of numbness. So numbness in general, so you pinch the patient may not feel it. So numbness externally, you can look over here and you will see hydrocyanic acid over here. So that's there. And usually can be a paralysis, as I said to you, that it is a good remedy for cerebrovascular accident. And the paralysis is usually on the left side. The heart gets affected usually in hydrocyanic acid. So there can be what is known as atrial fibrillation type of picture in hydrocyanic acid. So that's another thing to be, or there can be a sick sinus syndrome. The pulse can be very irregular. It can be frequent. It can be slow. It could be soft. Many things comes out. And the most important is everything comes suddenly. So if you look under repertory, sudden manifestations, you will see hydrocyanic acid. So this is what we see. We give hydrocyanic acid in such situation when somebody is on ventilator, we give a very high potency. So we start with 1 m because the vital force is sinking. Patient's values are dropping down and slowly the person goes into what is known as multi-organ failure. And when somebody is going into the multi-organ failure, you have to be very, very careful that this is not a very good condition. If you don't treat it very fast, so we have to start with 1 m, then 10 m and 50 m. And we repeat it every 1 hourly or even sometimes half an hourly. And we wait for not more than 45 minutes or 1 hour. If the things don't change, the remedy selection was totally wrong. Totally wrong. So this is very important. The next remedy that I would like to share with you, which I have used it in this epidemic, is the mustard gas. Now, let me share with you mustard gas. So maybe Ah, yeah. So let me see where is my mustard gas. Well, so here is my mustard gas document, which I want to show you.
Can you share the screen, Faisal?
Yeah. Huh? I'm trying to bring it in the sharing, but I can see it on my computer, but it doesn't come. Can you all see now? Can you see it? Okay.
Yes,
So
yes,
this is
thank you.
my idea on mustard gas. Now let me tell you, I have been using this remedy for last many years. Okay. And I have a good experience where the lungs get collapsed or the lungs become very weak. And these are some of the symptoms which I was able to find out. Dr. W.L. Templeton from England gets the credit of collecting the symptoms in the beginning, all poisoning symptoms. But later on, I have added these symptoms under asphyxia, pulmonary edema. That's very characteristic. Huh? So you see under what is known as pulmonary edema. And then impeded respiration, congestion of the lung, hepatization, congestion of lungs, mucus in the bronchial tubes. Now, somebody was talking about adult respiratory distress syndrome, but I beg to differ. In COVID-19, you don't get ARDS type of picture. Actually, basically, all the bronchioles suddenly collapse, and that's how person develops severe respiratory distress. So you can take this rubric: paralysis of the lung from catarrh, paralysis of the lung from congestion of the lungs. These are some of the symptoms of mustard gas that I have witnessed. I have given one case of mustard gas recently to German organization to get it published about a COVID-19 patient. Patient was also, let me be very honest with you, on conventional allopathic drugs for about 10 days prior to when we intervened and started mustard gas along with the conventional medicine. And this remedy was given for 15 days. Unfortunately, I never had a higher potency. So the highest potency that we could use was only 200 potency. Continued for 15 days. in the beginning 4-5 times a day, later on 2 times a day. And finally, the patient recovered very well from the respiratory failure. So this is what I wanted to share with you. And another remedy that I want to, same document, another remedy that I want to discuss with you is Solanum aceticum. This will be the last remedy that I want to share today with you all. This remedy, I am using it for last more than 3 decades. It was introduced to me when I was reading Materia Medica by Dr. Margaret Tyler. And under antimony tat, I think so, or carbo-wedge, she mentions this remedy, that how useful this remedy it was for her when she was treating patients in Royal London Homeopathic Hospital. And so from that particular point, I started using it a lot. Now, Solanum aceticum is an alkaloid, basically, from different solanums. Solanum dulcamara, Solanum nigrum, and Solanum tuberosum. So 3 plants, an alkaloid is extracted known as Solanum aceticum. This is a small Materia Medica from Clark's dictionary. If you want, I can share this document to the people. But these are my addition and my work where you see collapse of the lung. The first and the most important thing is the lung collapse. Passive congestion in the lungs. Pulmonary edema. Pleural exudates. Heart failure accompanied by lung edema. So here, between the mustard gas and solanum, the edematous tendency is very strong, along with a strong septicemia. So a lot of gram-negative bacteria, especially Klebsiella, and finally producing lung paralysis due to lung infection. Also paralysis of the heart. And these are some of the respiration we were able to confirm with this particular remedy. So this is what I have to say for today, some experience about COVID-19 patients that we saw. So I saw it in the beginning stage, many COVID patients, and I saw them in a very, very terminal cases, patients who are on ventilator. My only request to you is 2 things. You should have a skill to treat such patients and use reliable Materia Medica. A very strong, reliable Materia Medica. Materia Medica that has been verified clinically on the bedside on patients in the hospital or in your clinic. That's very important because COVID-19 is not a virus that we can take it very lightly. Of course, people do improve. Percentage of death is small. But in old patients, debilitated patients, people with renal failure, people with cancer, they succumb very easily to COVID-19. So we have to be very, very careful, especially if somebody is about 80 years, 90 years, they succumb very, very fast. Mostly the patients that I have seen in ICU, intensive care units, were all above 65. They were not a young people of 20 years old, 30 years old, or 40 years old. That's my advice to all of you. Thank you so much, Sandeep, for inviting me for this lovely webinar. And thanks to all the other speakers. Bob, I learned a lot from your Cryptococcus, even though I don't read modern materia medica. So honestly, I'm very frank. And thanks to Peter, I learned ozone from you. I have never used ozone, never I have read about ozone because I'm very skeptical about new materia medica. I'm an old timer and I have more faith in the old books prior to 1965. So thank you, Dr. Roger Savage, for conducting this lovely webinar. Thanks to the audience. Thank you all.
Dr. Farokh Bhai, have you not also been using Justicia in quite a lot of your cases?
Yes, so Justicia basically was used by me to give the patient immunity against any chest infection. So not necessarily only COVID. So in my practice, I have been using Justicia in 3x potency basically. So some people are afraid of winter cough, some people are afraid of winter bronchitis, some people are afraid of flu epidemic. So in all these patients, I use Justicia. Another remedy which I use a lot is cochlearia. So Justicia and cochlearia I use a lot. Very nicely, somebody said in the webinar, I don't know which speaker talked about oscillococcinum. So I do use oscillococcinum a lot. Influenzinum I am not using much, but oscillococcinum, yes, I am using it.
So as well as Justicia, this was Cochlearia armoracea.
Cochlearia autumnale. I think so it is spotted Cochlearia. Let me see. Let me see.
They often ask, what is the remedy that somebody has mentioned?
So it's Cochlearia arboracea.
It is, yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. This is now our chance to open for any questions to any members of the panel. I don't know whether Ton is still there. I can't see his picture.
I'll request everybody to raise their hand so that we can look for you. Those who want to ask a question, kindly raise your hand.
Yeah. You will be able to see it, Dr. Sandeep.
Yeah.
Well, there are one or two written questions here.
Where is me?
Oh, he's there.
Yeah, I was already there, but I don't know what happened.
Well, you're out in the garden, Tom. That's excellent.
Yeah, for the first time of the year, we have nice weather.
Very good.
We have a lot of sun, but it's still very cold.
Okay. Right. So, Dr. Sandeep, can you see people asking questions with hands? I can't.
Dr. Dryani is there. He wants to ask something. Dr. Dryani, please unmute your mic. Dr. Dryani, can you hear me?
It seems not.
Dr. Suman?
Yeah, actually, I would like to ask about ozone in LM potency. Who is the manufacturer and whether it is available in India or not? Am I clear?
No. Did you say is ozone remedy available in India?
No, yeah, in LM potency, LM
in India.
Yeah, and who is the manufacturer?
I don't think so. It is available in India. You have to look for it.
Rajesh, who is the co-editor of Complete Repertory, and I sent him a set of the ozone from LM1 to LM4 because
Rajendran.
Yeah, Rajesh Rajendran.
Yeah.
I don't know if it arrives because there was a kind of prohibition on the side of the post. So I sent it to Roger van Zandvoort, and he's probably from Thailand, resending to India. But definitely he made a request for ozonum to some pharmacies. So maybe it's a good question to Rajesh.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for answering.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq, there is one question for you. That what is the rate of improvement in days seen after our intervention in various stages of COVID?
It all depends at what stage you are putting the patient. So if a person is on ventilator and the respiratory failure, the success rate is anywhere between 5 to 10% only. 95% of the patients, they die. So at that stage, the success rate is only between 5 to 10%. So far, I'm talking about terminally ill COVID-19 patients who are on mechanical ventilation for last 6 days, 7 days. No, we lose the patient.
Okay. Next question, Tom. It is for you. You
Yeah.
said patients recovered in 3 days. Does this refer to symptomatic or clinical improvement or even testing as negative? Can you break up when clinical improvement starts and when case becomes negative? As that kind of guidance is helpful, as we have seen cases is needed. This is by Dr. Geeta Arora.
I don't understand the question quite clear because
I'll ask Dr. Geeta to please unmute your mic and ask the question.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay. Okay, so can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, yeah. First, I would like to congratulate Dr. Master for very clearly defining the role in the initial stages and in the later stages. Now, my question for you, Tom, is that you said that there was a wonderful improvement in 3 days, like the case you talked about, Cinna arsenicum. So
Yeah.
I wanted to know that have you kept a data as to in how many days is a clinical improvement happening? And after how many days is the patient becoming negative as far as the testing is concerned? Because that kind of data is needed to claim that homeopathy, what role homeopathy is really playing. So are you keeping that data, or if others are keeping that data?
This data I have in my practice, and this lady was a nurse in the hospital. She works with corona patients. So, and she was tested positive, and after 3 days, she was covered from all the symptoms, and she feels much better, and she wants to work after 5 days. So, and they want to have her, but I advise her to stay a few days more home to get really fit.
But Tom, did they retest her to find her negative, the lady is asking?
No, no,
Ah.
that's not what they do in Holland.
No, nor here.
No, so even the most tests are mostly false positive, because the most people who get corona has got the vaccine, the flu vaccine. And when people had the flu vaccine, they are positive when they have the symptoms. That's the reason in Holland they don't want to have widespread tests for everybody, because they know it.
But then how do we define if homeopathy is really treated the patient or not?
How did they define if what?
That how is it being confirmed that if homeopathy is really making the patient COVID free or not? I'm not just talking about one case, but overall.
Yeah, but what is important, I think when the patient is out of symptoms and feels okay, and even in her case, the asthma was there, and the asthma was less important anymore. So she was more stronger. Even her lungs become better after the treatment. So the underlying situation I always take into the case, into the remedy I choose for the patient. Is it clear?
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Now I request Dr. Driani Please ask your question.
Well, Dr. Sandeep, I will
Sir.
not ask anything. Rather, I have learned so much. I will convey my compliments to all the speaker panels, especially the international teacher, Dr. Farooq Master, who has given or highlighted the bedside cases in a very, very simple language. No doubt, he always used the rare medicines, the hydrocyanic acid, mustard gas, selenium, Nux Vomica. In tertiary cases where the organ failures has taken place. Wonderful. Hats off to you. Thank you. Thank you. And I also learned ozone. What a wonderful medicine you have described about this ozone. I don't know whether it is available in India or not, but really when I came across the literature and what you explained in detail about the paralysis is a really wonderful to me. Since long I have been attending the webinar during these days, but this will be the first webinar which has enriched my knowledge and developed the confidence to attend the tertiary cases. Earlier, we were knowing only this much, we can treat only for the first or second stage. Thank you, Dr. Sandeep, for giving me an opportunity. I have no question, because I have learned so much. That's why I will convey my heartfelt thanks to you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being there. Next question by Dr. Shripad Hegde.
Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Hegde, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon. It is a wonderful session. I congratulate each and every eminence. I think Farooq Master was with me in LMHI Sorrento. He was my chairman when I was presenting. Really, it is a good learning process. Sir, we would like to know this. What is the takeaway message? Because we are suffering from epidemic. I expect from the eminence what they could able to guide the public as well as doctors.
What exactly are you asking?
Yeah, because many new remedies have come up with today's discussion.
Yes.
We are facing a problem, the epidemic as a prevention in a different area, different remedy comes. And today we have a different eminence from different places. What advice you could able to give for the junior doctors?
Well, that advice has been given during the webinar by G. And Dr. Sandeep, we will be able to make some recording available afterwards, won't we?
Yeah, the recording will be available.
So people who may have missed certain points in the speaking will be able to hear it again.
Dr. Hegde, what I could make out is that you want to know what's the gist of today's webinar, right?
Yeah.
Again, it is homeopathy, and we can't just just make it a point that yes, this is the only remedy.
Dr. Bob gave a very good, wonderful presentation. Actually, it is a new remedy to come up.
Yeah.
Whether it is available in India?
No, it is. I don't think so. It is available, but still, I'll get it checked. I don't think so. It is available.
No, Bob said that to get some arrangement to get that remedies.
Yeah, we will get it from UK. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay, Sandeep. Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Bob explained, he gave you a list of the rep pharmacies that have it, and as Dr. Sandeep says, this can be arranged.
That next question, Dr. Vishal Nimbore. Can you hear me? Dr. Vishal? Yeah. Hello?
Sir, anyone can ask, what is the statistics of the cured patient, the patients which are not cured?
Your question is not clear. Can you just repeat it?
Just I want to ask the statics or research, whatever is made about of homeopathy. With homeopathy, what is the research made of the COVID patient, whether from preventive aspects or from the curative aspects?
The voice is not clear actually. I couldn't hear you properly. But if any of our panelists can hear it, can we answer this?
I can hear him what he's trying to say. He's talking about the cure rate.
Yeah.
I think he's talking about the failure rate.
Failure or the cure rate? What are you asking about, Vishal?
Sir, I want to ask the only statics. What is the cure? Yes, for how many patients were treated and what were the failure or what were the cure?
Yeah. So see, please remember, Dr. Vishal.
Yes, sir.
As I told you in the beginning stage, the stage 1, majority of the people recover without medicine. Huh? Do you agree with me? So there is not much to give in this condition. I would say that in the beginning stage, when patient is very much asymptomatic, it is best to use the constitutional remedy, his own constitutional remedy, and try to tide over the crisis. And if you fail to do that, and then the new symptomatology develops, I think so it is best to give the remedy based on the new totality.
Yeah.
But once the disease goes advanced and attacks the lungs and then finally the kidney and the heart, the cure rate is only 5 to 10%, that too along with the modern medicine and not only homeopathy. You understood? So it is as good as we are hardly able to help them. The statistic is very low.
Okay, sir.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, Dr. A.K. Gupta. Dr. A.K. Gupta, can you hear me? Please unmute your mic.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, my heartiest congratulations to all the panelists and Dr. Sandeep for, organizing such a nice webinar. And I'm delighted to have so many new medicines which have come up in this discussion. So my not the question is first ozone and this Cryptococcus is not available in India. So one, as you have already said, that this will be made available. Probably we'll be able to use them. Now another thing is Dr. Farooq Master was telling that in the cases when the patients are there in hospital and the mode of treatment medication is by rubbing. That's what we give. To the patient and frequently, it's about after 2 hours or so. So that gives us, instantaneous relief. So with this, all those tubes and all that around, and when we are not able to get the symptoms probably, and the patient who has developed fibrosis, have you been able to see any cases where homeopathy could have helped those patients?
That's what Dr. Gupta, I told you the success rate is very bad because the small bronchioles, they collapse.
Yeah.
And that is why it's very difficult to revive the patient from that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever measures the modern medical doctors are doing is just palliative.
Okay.
And they are not able to palliate. It is our role as a homeopathic doctor to treat the patient objectively, symptomatology, based on blood report, based on the ventilator findings, based on the blood gas analysis, and that is how you select the remedy. Wait for few minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes. If there is no response, change the remedy. Here, the knowledge of the materia medica is extremely useful. If you see extensive fibrosis in the lung, another very good remedy which I have not discussed with you is bleomycin. Bleomycin is a drug we use in cancer therapy, but I use a lot this remedy in pulmonary fibrosis. Okay, Dr. Gupta.
Yeah. So, I mean, another thing, doctor, like, I mean, at this stage, when you say that things are bad, I agree. But have we been able to, with this, I mean, introduction of homeopathic medicines, have been there some changes, some, I mean, palliation as we
So what
see?
happens? Yes, so you are right. So I don't know how much fibrosis improves with homeopathic medicine, but the blood gas analysis report improves, the oxygen saturation improves, the PEEP improves, the FiO2 improves.
Yes, that's what I mean to say.
Yeah, so all these parameters do improve.
So
all these parameters do improve, and that is why I say homeopathy helps. Now, organ damage, how much the organ damage improves? Well, only we can know after autopsy, or we can only know when you see the organ with the naked eyes. So we don't know about the organ damage. But we can tell you about the parameters.
Yes. So, but I mean, because I mean, even if those parameters improve, I think the people, I mean, from the modern medicine, they should be able to assess that there's a variation or the improvement has come after, I mean, this homeopathic medication.
So they do.
Because this is also very important. If they
yes, you are right. In fact, people who refer me the cases are not homeopath. They are either neurosurgeon or chest specialists who invite me in the hospital that, look, you have experience handling such patients. Please take the case over and see if you can improve the blood gas analysis or the oxygen saturation or the mechanical ventilator findings. So we do that. But then the success rate is not very good, Dr. Gupta.
That success is, but
because we get the case at a very late stage. So the
that's the
pathology has
unfortunate part.
advanced. And that is why very little I can do. This is not an excuse, but this is a fact that we are called only at a very late stage.
Yeah, okay. But if the integration could have been done in the beginning, perhaps things would have been much better.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta.
May I, Roger? Roger.
Yeah, please.
In a case of fibrosis of lungs, you can think on prednisolone as a remedy, as a homeopathic remedy. It's really beautiful. I have a beautiful case with this. And with multi-organ failure, you can use Dioscorea or Camphora bromatum. Very beautiful.
For multi-organ
failure.
Yes. Wonderful.
Okay. Peter, next question is for you. Are you treating ventilator patients with ozone, and what percentage survive?
It's hard to answer this question for ethical and other reasons. Of course, I have some access to these patients, but you know how to claim a success. There is no any design of the study how to compare the people who are on ventilators and not receiving any homeopathic remedy and who are on ventilator and receiving something. So simply, it's just the kind of intuitive judgment. You know, there's no any way how to really say, okay, this improvement is related to homeopathic medicine. Because on the ITU, they receive all the possible support of the vital functions like ventilatory support, gases. But I can tell you, there are many reports from the world, from Ibiza, from Italy, from many other countries. They are using a mixture of oxygen and ozone into the ventilators. And the people who receive the crude ozonum in the ventilator are improving better than the people without. And there is a study done, I can send the links later on, a study done by the intensivist in Rome, who published first this topic. And there is very famous Dr. Rowan, who is they call him ozone doctor, because he's suggesting for many conditions, ozonum as the very good remedy, I mean, in the crude substance, not as a homeopathic remedy, but as a crude substance for many type of diseases.
Okay, thank you. Now this question is to all panelists. This is by Dr. Akshara Arora. she wants to know that if the virus is supposedly spread by bats, should not it had been necessary to contain the bat population in Wuhan, not just the infected humans? Because if the infected bats are still out in the wild, they increase the number of infected humans. Should they have been contained until and unless the bats and their population was also contained? I think it's a hypothetical question.
Okay, maybe I have it is not the direct answer to the question, but I have heard Divya Chabrat suggesting one of the bat remedy for this particular epidemic, among other remedies, of course. And we have heard very nice talk from the Pope about the Cryptococcus Neoformans. As we know already, the Cryptococcus Neoformans, it's in the droplets from the pigeons, but also from the droplets in the caves when the bats are living. So actually, what is the possible connection between all of these? It's a Cryptococcus Neoformans. So I don't know if bat remedy is working for this particular epidemics, but definitely I would consider Cryptococcus Neoformans in few cases as well. And it comes from the bats. It's known. Yeah. So it's in the excrements of the bats and also in excrements of pigeons.
Okay. Now the next question I'll ask Dr. Kiran Babu Mehta. Please unmute your mic and ask the question. Yes, Dr. Mehta.
Sandeep sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Sir, Sandeep sir.
Yeah, please go ahead and ask the question.
Sir, I'm very happy to all lecturers. It's a very wonderful day today. And I'm very extremely thanks to Bob Blaze, sir, Dr. Bob Blaze, sir. Can I ask a question to Dr. Bob?
Yeah, please go ahead. He's listening.
Sir, in the time of present in COVID-19 era, which prescription is better, sir? Either constitutional or pathological?
Can someone just repeat the question, because it was so faint my end I couldn't really hear it.
Couldn't hear.
Now COVID-19 era, which prescription is better, sir? Either constitutional prescription is better or pathological prescription is better?
I think your voice is not clear.
I still can't hear.
No.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, please speak.
Sir, Dr. Bob, sir.
Yes?
Sir, prescription, which prescription is better, sir, now? Is it pathological or constitutional?
I can't hear you clearly.
No.
Your voice is not clear.
Sir?
Maybe if you were to type the question, I might be able to respond.
Type it out.
Can you just write it out? For the timing, I'll take the next question.
I will pass
Bob, yeah, please.
Bob, somebody asked this question. What was the potency, dosage, and methodology for the proving of Cryptococcus? Just to
I was going to ask the same question.
So I've replied in the chat saying that what I'm going to do is I'm going to type out my protocol into a document, and then in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, send that to Dr. Sandeep, and hopefully he can distribute it to everyone.
Excellent.
And they're welcome to add their own contact details if it's something you want to share with patients, or just use it in your own clinic. And I'm not suggesting you necessarily use Cryptococcus like I'm using it. Just consider it as another remedy that may be indicated in your cases. And I fully support the idea of treating cases on an individual case-by-case basis, individualizing each case as much as possible.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
I did research proving with 3 colleagues of me with COVID-19, and it gives nearly the same symptoms as Cryptococcus.
Mm.
Must be a beautiful remedy.
Yeah, and so someone was asking in the chat about constitutional or pathological prescription. Again, my experience of it's limited experience, but patients with mild symptoms of coronavirus that seem to be covered by their constitutional remedy, but that constitutional remedy is not necessarily one of the genus epidemicus remedies that is coming up as covering the picture of the whole disease and it's manifesting in the population as a whole, not just one person. So taking all of those cases and using all of those symptoms together. If you're using the constitutional remedy and it seems to be covering the symptoms of the patient, but it's not one of those genus epidemicus remedies, in my experience, it will help symptomatically, but there's every chance that even a week or so later, that some of those symptoms are coming back again. Because for me, one of the real big characteristics of this virus is the relapsing nature and the intermittent nature. So patients seem to be making a recovery with or without a remedy. And then maybe even a week, 10 days later, they're going back into exactly the same symptoms. And so that's one of the reasons then I'm using Cryptococcus as a remedy, which is addressing which is particularly more relevant to the epidemic than their constitutional remedy. And I would say then I'm also giving people the advice to carry on taking that remedy or any other remedy that's been helping them for several days after the disappearance of symptoms to deal with this issue of the relapse of symptoms, to make sure it's really kind of out of their system energetically and they're not going to relapse.
So nowadays we need to dig deep under the surface to find a constitutional remedy because of all the issues from pollution to medication, vaccinations, and so on. So we can't see a clear constitutional picture. That very rarely, when you have reasonable, clean persons who have no vaccines, no allopathic treatments, there is a possibility to see a real constitutional remedy. But mostly we see only in our treatment acute things that's a little pop up of a part of the constitution, but not a complete constitution. So it becomes more difficult for homeopaths to cure in general.
Yeah, and I would add to that that in an acute epidemic infection, it's not the same as like a transient explosion of their latent sora or their chronic disease, where the constitutional remedy is more relevant if someone's doing an acute in their own familiar way. But when you've got this new totality coming and this new infective disease coming, then you should really treat this as a new picture, take a new totality of the acute symptoms, and preferably, you know, following the instructions of aphorism 100 to 102 or 3, you should really try and understand the totality of the disease as a whole, which is not just present in one patient, but many different cases, and see the remedies that are really indicated in that. So one approach that Jeremy Sher, for instance, is advocating is to have a repertory clipboard of the main common symptoms characterizing this disease as a whole, and then add into that the 1 or 2 characteristic symptoms that are presenting in the individual case in front of you, and see which remedies come out, therefore, that are indicated for the disease as a whole, but also indicated by these particular remedies, these more strange, rare, and peculiar remedies present in the case in front of you.
Mm-hmm. I'm agree.
Yeah. Okay. My next question is to Peter. Peter, where can we read about the provings of the medicines which you have indicated?
You mean the Proving of Ozone?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will show you. There are 2 books. It's Proving from Anishade. And then the second book, which is available, nice cases, is from my teacher, Anne Vervarke. She's a Belgian homeopath. And, I show you the pictures probably.
One of you's asked what is the names of the book. Peter is going to show them.
Okay.
Can you just write the names of the books?
Are you just?
Yeah, I'm just putting it on the screen. Just give me a moment. It's shared? It's shared? I don't see it.
No, not yet.
No.
It's coming now.
Yeah.
Right, that's the book by Anna Schadder.
You see it?
Yes, we can see the ozone proving Anna Schadder. Yes, and then have you got a picture for the book by Anne Vervarka?
I need to. And the sharing. Find the book.
Maybe it's an idea to send them afterwards to the people.
Yeah, exactly. If it doesn't come up quickly, let's send them afterwards.
It's called Behind the Glass Screen. So
yes.
I can send the link, yeah?
Let's send the link afterwards, Peter. Yes, it's not coming up at once, so that we can move on.
One last question by Dr. Liblin. Can you just unmute yourself? Dr. Liblin. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Could you hear me?
Yeah,
we can now, yes.
Yeah. This first question is for Dr. Bob. Where can we study the article about Cryptococcus?
Well, I think I've already sent a PDF of the slides of the PowerPoint to Dr. Sandeep, which I'm sure he will be able to share with everyone. Actually, as to the full proving, it still hasn't been published yet. It's part of the story of Cryptococcus. It's a huge proving, and unfortunately, the proving was done in a kind of tabulated grid form for the journals, which made the extraction incredibly difficult. So yeah, I don't think the proving is anywhere near publication yet. I have written an article about it from my understanding of it in the Spectrum journal. So Narayana Publishers has a Spectrum journal, and they did one edition a few years ago all about fungi, and I've got an article about the proving in that.
Is there any peer-reviewed journal that it's going to published, or just in a general?
I imagine when it's ready, it will be published on the Dynamis website. So that's Jeremy Sher's Dynamis School. It has a website with lots of provings available as PDF files to download, and I'm pretty certain that that's where it will appear when it's published.
And he also asked about carbon monoxide. Is there a known proving of that, Bob?
I mean, it appears in Materia Medica, I imagine Alan's encyclopedia from what I can remember. But again, it's not so much homeopathic proving symptoms. The proving is basically toxicology. They've taken toxicology and accidental poisonings and put a picture together there. But part of the picture there, as I understand it, is a kind of feeling of absolute fear and terror and panic, the feeling that you're going to die, the feeling that you desperately need fresh air and oxygen, but you haven't, but your body feels paralyzed. You can't get up, you can't get to the window, your body feels paralyzed. So lots of paralysis and numbness as well, which is where it links with hydrocyanic acid, the fear, the numbness, the paralysis.
Second question is for Farooq Master. I want to know that what is the reliable materia medica? You have said that you have to go through the reliable without using the reliable materia medica to treat COVID patient, because in modern, we are in the modern era. We have no materia medica which was revalidated with patients. So
Nothing to do with COVID-19 patients. Reliable materia medica
I
has
want
to
to
be used for every cases and not only for COVID-19 patients, where there is a good proving either in a toxicological way or in a clinical way, or applying the remedy at the bedside, collecting the symptoms. That particular materia medica is known as a reliable materia medica. Most of the materia medica written before 1965 are extremely reliable. I have verified this in the last 40 years of my practice, and that is why I stick to that kind of information that really helps me to see patients. It's not that I'm against new remedies. It's not that I'm not interested in studying new remedies. Basically, I select the remedy, the source, the proving, where it comes from. I check the reliability, and then only I start using the remedy. So this is what I mean as reliable materia medica.
thank you, sir. And finally, is for all panelists. Um, do we have any website or any place where the COVID treated cases with homeopathy is registered or updated, so that anyone like me can study in future? Or because many doctors from many places are doing this kind of research. If there is one single website, then it would be more reliable. Well,
Yes, very soon you can see them in Clificol project by Radar Opus. If you have Radar Opus program, you can download Clificol, and in Clificol they are collecting the data from COVID-19 from all over the world. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
One last question. What is the underlying mechanism of intervention by homeopathic medicine? And what is the period of dose which can prevent a particular epidemic? This is to all countries.
Can you repeat this question because it was not clear?
The doctor wants to know, Dr. Panela Day, she wants to know that what mechanism works in the preventive medicines in homeopathy, and what period of doses is required to prevent a particular epidemic.
So how, in other words, how do we do prophylaxis? What is the way we do it and how long does it last? That's a difficult question to answer. So Ton, are you ready for that first?
We have a remedy from Hale, and that's what is the name? It will not come. It is homeopathically. I find out that COVID-19 in a 30K 3 drops 7 days after each other is very useful as a prophylaxis for COVID. So takes one moment. First the others, and then I have the remedy. I search.
You'll think of the name. Okay, yeah. Going up my list. Bob, any suggestions?
Sorry, I was just a bit distracted because I'm just putting a link available for Jeremy Scher's colleagues and all their database of symptoms and stuff. So come to me in a minute and just maybe repeat the question when you come to me.
That's
yeah,
right.
Thanks.
Peter, do you have any suggestion? Are you using ozone in a preventive sense?
Yeah. Some of my prescription were just prophylactic. So it's usually, I call it imperative of homeopathy to individualize the case.
Yes.
Even during the pandemic, even during the epidemic, even if it is, I call it thunderbolt prescription, I still take at least 5 minutes to talk with the patient, to see the symptoms, or to have the Zoom conversation with the patient. And then, of course, if you see many cases of ozonum, you need just 5 minutes to recognize if it's ozonum case. But some people don't like this. They just say, do you have something, just a prophylactic? I say, isn't it better to talk about your problems or about your fears at least for 5 minutes? No, I don't want it. I just want something prophylactic. But these are the cases I also prescribe ozone or just to deliver the remedy. But I can't claim any success because how to measure this? How to measure this? But I know from my patients who are on ozonum. I tell you one case. It's already published on websites. It's a case number P. And after the taking the remedy, he was a very sensitive person. He was sensitive to energies, everything. And he says, doctor, I tell you something. After your remedy, I become a fog. And I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, I become a fog. I become invisible. I don't understand you. Can you please explain me this experience? And he said, I'm invisible for the virus. He can't grasp me. If you are crystallic white fog, how is it possible for the virus to grasp me? And it was after the ozone, the second day.
So everyone may not have caught that one word. It's as if he's become a fog or a mist and therefore is invisible.
Yeah, exactly. Or cloud. They usually call it cloud, fog.
Or a cloud. Cloud, fog, mist. Yeah.
Whatever. Well, this
and
symbol
therefore invisible. Yes.
Invisible or ungraspable.
Ungraspable, yes, can't be touched. So Bob, you've done the link. This person was asking, do you think in terms of prophylaxis for this?
When people are asking for it, or particularly among my more vulnerable patients, high-risk patients, people with severe underlying lung pathology, particularly if they're in the older category. Yeah, I am. I think I said, and I'll include it in the protocol that I'm going to send, I'm giving influenzainum 30 once a month, and then Cryptococcus 200C once a week for 3 doses, then once every 10 days for 3 doses.
Yes. See, not everybody may have been in at the time that you said that. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And I have to go very soon.
You do, because
yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for staying this long, Bob. Thank you. In fact, let's release you and say thank you very much indeed. No, you've got to be ready.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you to the other panelists. It was really great to be part of this discussion and to have your input and expertise and knowledge. Brilliant.
Yes.
Thank you.
It was a very high quality input of information, a lovely exchanging. Ton, have you remembered that remedy from Hale Company?
I was searching it. It is from Hale, and where I have it.
Ton, that remedy has taken ozonum, and it's hiding in a mist.
Okay, so let it go.
When you remember it, you can please let us know and we'll broadcast it.
Yeah, I send it also to you, the remedy. It is an auricular remedy.
All right. Okay. Yes. You don't mean quercetin.
What you say?
You don't mean that you're not talking about the supplement quercetin.
Quercetin and zinc is very beautiful to protect you and to close the receptors for the virus. So
yeah, sure thing. Yes,
it's very healthy to do it in a normal dose, like 2 times 200 milligrams quercetin a day and 2 times 60 milligrams zinc a day.
Yeah.
And it's very useful.
Okay, good. Before we come to end of this webinar, Roger, I would like to ask Dr. Farooq one last question.
Of course.
Sir, Teresa is asking that do you use oscillococcinum as prophylactic or any other medicine as prophylactic in COVID cases?
No, in COVID cases, so far I have not used oscillococcinum, but many times my patients who reside in Western countries, and they write to me an email that influenza is around a lot in their vicinity, what preventive medicine should I take? Then my answer is many times oscillococcinum 6C, manufactured by Boiron Company, 3 doses in 1 day, and then nothing for next 15 days.
Okay. So before rather you thank all the panelists, I would like to disclose that Dr. Farooq has arranged samosa party in his clinic. So after finishing with this webinar, we all are invited over there.
Oh. Okay. Bye-bye. See you.
So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you
Thanks, John.
all remaining for an absolutely excellent event.
Yeah, for
And we
sure.
hope that all of
I
you
enjoyed very much. Thank you all.
Yes.
And see you another time, I hope.
Absolutely. We
you.
shall be asking you. Thank you.
Thanks.
And
Bye-bye.
a very nice first
Thanks.
meeting. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.